Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to you. I'm happy to meet you again here in the framework of OSCE, where the Southeast European Cooperative Initiative, what's that? No, it's RUSTAMOV. That's me, beg your pardon. Is based, and we are cooperating for years and years and years here with OSCE quite fruitfully. I'm very happy that you are joining us because the question of energy supply security is a key question for the future. But it's also a question including a lot of tensions. On the one side, by the ecological discussions and by the climate problem and we have a tendency, I think we have to save energy. On the other side, we are developing a technology where we need more energy. So far, I think it does not really fit together, and I think to manage this is one of the difficult problems. I think I'm following the conference in Glasgow currently. I have not the impression that they are focusing on this problem. I think it's only one direction and not looking the other direction. But this is multifaceted. I think here we have a multiple choice problem, may I say, which is typical for our time and our possibilities we have. Just an opening remark, I'm not an expert, but politically I think it is a big problem. So far, again, many thanks you are joining us. I think especially thanks I have to say to Gerhard. He was so nice to prepare this conference, and you did it quite engaged with a lot of emails as far as I was following, but you succeeded, and that's quite good because we cannot wait until we are arriving at the moment of the development where it is easier to discuss this. We have to do it in the middle of these developments to focus on this, and that's the reason why I'm saying many thanks to you that you are taking part here. Another remark, I think the Southeast European Cooperative Initiative is for a very long time posted in OSCE. For those who are not aware about the history, but things have their own history for a longer time. I think I was appointed as a special coordinator of the Southeast European Cooperative Initiative, which was invented by the Americans, by Ambassador Schiffter. He died with 97 last year, and he was a key figure concerning politics in the Balkans, because I think he invented a lot of things, especially to create a regional cooperation after the downfall of Yugoslavia. For him it was clear, I want to say quite open, more clear than for the Europeans, that we need the cooperation of the states coming out of Yugoslavia, because I think these are the problems existing, and we are still focusing on this with limited success, because if we are looking to the last efforts, I think to create a real strategy for the enlargement of the European Union, I think even by the Slovenian presidency, we did not too much succeed. This is a noble remark, may I say, because I'm maybe the only participant here in this round who was at the European Council in Thessaloniki 2003, where we decided that all the countries of the region have to become members of the European Union. We are far off. There's only one success story, that's Croatia. And we are not really proceeding. But this is another subject. I think we are doing everything possible in this direction, but it is necessary to say. Energy supply security in Central and Southeast Europe is of great importance, not only for the countries themselves, but here in general, because we have also a lot of possibilities. I think to gain renewable energy, like example by water or by wind and so on and so on, here are not all possibilities secured and really done. even I would say that's my hope to the meeting, that we are getting some information about a better strategy that we can continue on this subject. But here I want to stop, and I think we shall proceed. And I give the floor to Dr. Michael FAZEKAS. He is the Executive Coordinator of the Southeast European Cooperative Initiative. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Erhard. So, dear Vice Chancellor, dear Mr. Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me as well to welcome you today on behalf of the Southeast European Cooperative Initiative, which is working within the framework of the OEC, which is being today's host. I would like to thank the OEC, therefore, and I also would like to thank our close cooperation partner, the EDM, Ambassador Gerhard, and Executive Director Sebastian SCHÄFFER. SECI has been focusing on cross-border programs and projects in the region since its foundation 25 years ago in December 1996. Therefore, the topic of energy supply and its security has been occupying our initiative for quite a long time. Like its EU members, most non-EU members of the SECI region are energy insecure, being energy importers heavily dependent on especially Russian gas. Russia is also a big energy player in the Western Balkans, therefore as the main gas supplier to Serbia, North Macedonia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, being in the rest of our member countries one of the main suppliers. I would like to, and we can deepen that maybe afterwards, to say some words about one of our main projects that has been SECI following for some years. SECI has made possible a multinational effort among national transmission utilities in Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Kosovo, Macedonia, Montenegro, Romania and Serbia. And that has been managed and funded by the U.S. Agency for International Development and the U.S. Energy Association. Under SECI, the 9 countries developed an electricity network planning model, enabling utilities, policymakers and regulatory authorities to efficiently plan for various power sector development scenarios. The models or scenarios we reveal to how renewable energy generation can safely and reliably be added to the regional grid. Therefore, the effect energy efficiency will have on electricity trade and the potential to establish new connections with European wholesale electricity markets. Therefore, Southeast Europe was endowed with a sustainable regional network planning capacity, which has brought great efficiency to electricity trade and improved the power quality to electricity consumers throughout the Balkans. Concluding, despite the EU efforts, energy security remains a concern, and the picture is a very mixed one with both positive and negative trends. Therefore, I would like to thank you for your participation today, and I wish us all a successful conference, and I look forward to our debates and interactions.
Many thanks, Michael, for your introductory remark, and many thanks also for the cooperation we have by the Institute for the Danube region and Central Europe with you on behalf of SECI. The next introduction will be virtual by Ulrike LUNACEK. A short introduction. Ulrike LUNACEK is an old friend for a very long time. She is very much engaged, especially in Southeast Europe. Her role, I think, was of great importance, especially also concerning Kosovo and so on and so on. She did a lot with a great engagement. I like her very much. She's a very open person to the possibilities and very much engaged. Ulrike, technically, I want to give you the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Erhard. Also for your kind words and also for inviting me here to give at least a brief statement at the beginning. Very sorry that I cannot stay for the whole time, but there's other commitments I had to go to. So as Erhard BUSEK already said, especially during my time in the European Parliament, my focus in foreign affairs was, foreign and European affairs was the Western Balkans. And there the issue of energy supply always has been a topic. Just remember the hard winters where then in some of the cities you have smog because of coal energy and so on. So this is something that I think especially, and I think also Erhard BUSEK has mentioned it, with the Glasgow summit at the moment, we see that, and I mean, it is so important to realize that we have to really fight the climate crisis in a coordinated and mutual way. And the way out is, and I know there's many representatives here of the also gas and oil industry, but it is important to phase out fossil fuels. Without that, we will not be able to meet the climate targets. And this is not just an issue of, well, sometime in the future. It's relevant right now. And it is about the future generations. It's about health issues. It's about all the things that our life on this planet. Because I always said in the past and also now, there is that the planet probably can survive on its own. It doesn't need humans. On the contrary, we need it. And what is happening, and we've seen that last summer in many of our regions in all of Europe, also Central and Southeastern Europe, that high level of floods, all other kinds of incidents that nature is is doing. We see this is an outcome of the climate crisis. So I think it is important to look at three issues where we can do more. One is saving energy. The second one is energy efficiency. I mean, all the buildings we are sitting in right now as well can be renovated in order not to need any heat or any air conditioning. This is possible. Of course, you need lots of people who know how to do it. You need funding for also households to do that. But if we know how much we invest in other things, it is important to really shift towards this kind of energy supply. And of course, knowing also my own country, Austria, but the region and also Southeastern Europe, there is lots of chances for renewable energy. Sun and wind has been mentioned already, also water. This is possible. And I think efforts really have to go there. And also when we look at traffic, at mobilization, at mobility, I mean, in the times of Yugoslavia, there were railroads going all over the place. Right now, I think some more efforts should be done in order to also help people to change to take railroads, but also for goods to be transported via rail. This doesn't happen from one day to the next, we know, but it is something that I think also here, when you look at the energy supply, it's important to see what kind of energy will be an energy that will protect future generations, because that's about everything we have to discuss right now. And of course, humans have been inventing lots of things. We have flown to the moon. So it is important to use technology. There are technological solutions, but I'm convinced it's not the only thing. I think we also have to think about changing our habits, the way we live in a very stressful life. It's not just about abstaining from some things like taking your car every day to work. It's also about maybe having a life where you can read on the train when you go to work. So this is just some examples where I think you will be discussing today. I know you will be discussing grids and energy security. And also, as I think it was Mr. FAZEKAS, or was it Erhard BUSEK, already said that, of course, we also have to look into where the gas and oil comes from. Russia has been mentioned. And I will finalize and finish here just by saying, in my long years in the European Parliament and as a European, I find it so important that the European Union moves on in integrating and welcoming and really showing that the 6 Western Balkan countries into the European Union, because if we don't do that, and not just with energy supply, not just helping and supporting. If we do not do that, then other states that maybe are not really in our interest, like Russia or China, are looking into getting into that region. And I think that also is a fact for the energy supply, to be more independent energy-wise from states that are not really an example of democracy, to put it slightly. That is important also when we talk about energy supply. So I wish you a very good debate, and I think it will not be the last one on that topic. Thank you for organizing it, and have a good debate and a good day anyway. So all the best, and bye-bye. Thank you.
Many thanks, Ulrike, for your remarks. I think your substantial remarks. I only want to mention 2 points on which you were focusing. The one was under the title Russia. I think we are making the mistakes as a European only to consider Russia as Putin. I think it is not only Putin. There are living millions of people there. They have a lot of opportunities, and we are really excluding being aware of the fact that Russia is a part of Europe. Maybe we have to wait until Mr. Putin is not anymore existing, but I think the world is moving forward, and we have to consider it, and we have to look at this. And the other point, Ulrike, I'm extremely grateful to you, is that you were considering our behavior. I think the real change we have to do is in our behavior, the way in which we are living and what we are doing. I think it is not only possible to do it by facts and figures, by legislation and so on, which is always done here as the only instrument. No, I think we need a discussion substantially on the behavior of the human beings and how they are doing it, and which feeling are they getting, not only for nature, but of the way of life we are doing, on what we are spending, what are our priorities, on which things are we looking and we're not looking, and so on and so on. That's of great importance. I think it's leading in the direction, for example, to ethics. I think this question we are discussing is connected with ethics also by principles, which is not enough done also by the governments. But this is another question, but we will focus further on this. I'm now moving to the other part of our meeting, to the Institute for the Danube region and Central Europe, and to Magister Sebastian SCHÄFFER. He's the Managing Director of IDM. Many thanks to you, Sebastian, for the preparation of this meeting and to the interest of the Institute. So far, I'm asking you to take over for the panel discussion here as a moderator under the title The Inconvenient Truth, How to Manage the Transition Right Now and Together. It's quite a question. I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Erhard. Thank you very much for all the speakers that set the stage, Ulrike, LUNACEK, Michael FAZEKAS, but also, of course, on behalf of IDM for the good cooperation, the technical support that we have here, Gerhard for bringing the idea to us, but also to the whole IDM team who was involved in putting this together, and also drafting these 2 titles of the 2 panels that we are going to talk about today. I'm very happy that I see some faces in the room with us. I want to engage in an open discussion, so feel free to ask questions, but there's also the possibility, of course, for the ones who join us virtually to ask questions. Please put it in the chat of the YouTube live stream. It will be monitored and brought directly to me. But now, let's start with our panel discussion. As we have heard, there are many challenges to revolve around this inconvenient truth, I would say. We have a current situation on the gas market. We have a current situation when it comes to energy supply security, which falls into some sort of recovery after the big word that we can't hear anymore, the pandemic, and will affect maybe this recovery And I'm very glad that I have the possibility to talk with four fantastic experts when it comes to these questions. And I would like to briefly present them to you. To my left is Predrag, who is the head of the gas unit at the energy community. Thank you very much that you join us today in the morning, despite being it a Monday. We have Dr. Carola, who is the head of the gas department of E-Control. Thank you very much to you as well for taking the time and joining us. We have with us Diploma Engineer Kurt MISAK, who is the head of security of supply of the Austrian power grid, APG. And joining us virtually, who hopefully can hear us, is Polad RUSTAMOV, who is the Chief Technical Officer of the TANAP gas pipeline. What we want to do in the next 1 hour is to go into a discussion where I would ask all of you to open with a statement on the current situation. Then I've prepared some more questions. We'll go into a second round, then open up for the audience, and then I've prepared a final question where we look into the future. The first question, how to manage the transition right now, requires to set certain targets. We have a need for clear goals, and we also need a timing. We should look at the various challenges from the perspectives of the organizations that are represented on this panel, and therefore I would like to ask as some sort of opening question for your opening statements. How do you evaluate the current situation on the gas market, and what challenges arise from your organization's perspective? And I would like to start with Predrag.
With me. Thank you. Thanks, Sebastian, and thanks to everybody, ladies and gentlemen. I will just, sorry, I have to spend 1 minute on general picture and who we are. I'm coming from the Energy Community Secretariat. Energy Community is an international organization based on a treaty. I think Mr. BUSEK is responsible partly for us existing. So we exist more than 15 years. The main goal was to transpose the European, not only policy, energy policy, but also energy laws into non-EU member states, more to be precise, into the Western Balkans at the time, and then the organization itself enlarged to Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. So we have the aim to have a very integrated energy market, but as you will see later, it's a very, very difficult task to have something connected with the EU member states and non-EU member states, as you can imagine. Our goal is, of course, to implement not only the existing packages, but also the looming clean energy package. There will be lots of discussion at this ministerial council in Belgrade later this month, where some packages will be on the table for our ministers to adopt. But we still don't have, as Sebastian rightly said, we still don't have targets for renewables, energy efficiency, nor for CO2 emissions. This is still being widely discussed in our contracting parties. As you can imagine, they have different agendas. Many of them are coal-based, many of them also prefer gas. So fossil fuel in our contracting parties is a reality and something that we will live for a very long time. Then, just a few words about the expectations from COP. I don't have a lot of expectations from this COP's annual meeting, unfortunately, because we don't see the big major the biggest players really committing to any targets, any significant and meaningful targets. We will have China doubling on their emissions by 2030 probably. We will have India, Nigeria, and all the other countries, emerging economies, who do not have, who use energy 20, 30 times less per capita than European countries and so on. And in order to have them decarbonized, I think we need to offer them something, not only to preach about our noble goals. Fossil fuels, as I said, are there to stay for a very long time in the world. But I would like to make a differentiation between the fossil fuels. Not each and every fossil fuel is equally bad. So there are some which are there, relatively abundant, relatively cheap. Okay, this is not the situation at this moment. And if you want to have an orderly transition, you cannot demonize everything, including natural gas. We have to live with natural gas and let it couple with the decarbonized options. So the technologies will emerge in the next decades, which will provide for more security and more decarbonization. So having said that, I will remind you that in Europe also decarbonization paths will be very different. Northwest will be, of course, decarbonized relatively easily with the renewables and probably new gas, which is called hydrogen. But the eastern part, the southeastern part, will be decarbonized with natural gas as a transitional fuel to remain there for decades. Poland, Ukraine, Serbia, we don't know what will happen in Kosovo, which unfortunately doesn't have gas infrastructure. So this is a particular example. But in our contracting parties, there is a big resentment towards all these policies saying that gas must go out immediately. Ukrainians are particularly nervous about this, and they don't accept this. Also about the dependencies. Yes, we are dependent on our external suppliers, and we will be for many years, of course. Russians generally do not even believe that decarbonization is possible in Europe. They envisage that natural gas consumption in Europe will more or less remain the same in the next 25 years. We will see if they are right. But we will have new dependencies when you develop renewable technologies. Don't be, stay assured that all these rare elements and all these production facilities will come from the countries where democracy is not even a concept, let alone be at least formally implemented. I'm talking about Central African countries, some Latin American countries. Don't forget that all this photovoltaic boost in Europe was not created by millions of well-paid jobs in Europe, but with cheap photovoltaics equipment coming from China, and so on and so forth. So in order to have an orderly transition, we should not demonize anything. We should start with what we have. We should be very realistic, very responsible, and acknowledge that even nuclear French fleet will help decarbonize Germany, United Kingdom, and the other part of Europe. So let's stop here. Maybe I was too long.
Thank you very much. We'll certainly come back to the points that you have mentioned, but I would like to continue with Dr. Maga.
Yes, many thanks also for inviting E-Control today for this interesting discussion. This already started with a very interesting introduction by my colleague from Energy Community. My name is Carola, and I'm the head of the gas department at E-Control, and I work, I think, for these gas topics more than 25 years. So I have a lot of discussions already on my table. I would like to give a short introduction in this gas situation in the gas market. We see there these high gas prices, how we got there. We saw in the summer some normal developments that we always see in the summer months, that you have to refill the storages, and we had a very long or very cold winter then in March, so the storage level were very low at the beginning of the injection season, and we also see always in the summer maintenance in the main pipelines, for example, in the Norwegian system and also in Russian system. This is, of course, this is clear. It's in the summer, they have lower flows, and then maintenance is, to make maintenance is best time, of course. But what we also saw in the summer before, that there were LNG flows to Europe. And this was, of course, totally different this year, because we have seen an increase in economic activity, not only in Europe but also in Asia, in South America, and so on. And we also saw that these LNGs, the LNG carriers, vessels did not go to Europe, but to Asia, because the prices were higher there. We have really a world trading market now. We have market integration, worldwide market integration via these LNG flows. And so we had lower LNG flows to Europe in the summer. We also saw that weather conditions were not so good for renewables in the summer, for example. We had the wind situation. This wind production was not so high that it was before. This was really something that we could see also in UK and so on. Could be also one result from climate change. And also we had some, I think in South America, some topics with water resources. And so the weather conditions were bad for other energy carriers, also for power production. And so the demands for gas in power production have rose and have risen. So we saw there a lot of topics that the gas demand worldwide increased. And we also saw some outages in energy facilities. And all these then pushed the prices up to a very high level that we haven't seen in gas market, I have to say, for 25 or 30 years, as long as we have trading hubs and we have these price signals, of course, in the market. And of course, we also saw CO2 prices going up, and this was also something that put coal out of the power production and put gas into the play. So this all were factors there for increasing prices. But we also, of course, saw some very high volatility in the market. So when we saw price spikes like 140 or 150 euros per megawatt hour, this was really something extraordinary, and we were not used to this in the gas market before. And this was, of course, because a lot of the trade in the gas market is over the counter, is bilateral. It's not on the exchange where you have the exchange as the counterpart, but you have really trading companies on the other side. You have to have a risk management between around this, and if and some of the smaller traders said, okay, we cannot afford these credit lines, for example, and so on, to really buy on this market, so we'll stop the trading for a while, and so the liquidity in the market, that you have not enough trading companies on the other side, it vanished a little bit. And this also pushed prices up, that this influenced these price spikes, that you have not so much liquidity in the market. And because you also ask, what are the challenges now? We, as, for example, as regulators, we always ask there, what is then for the next winter? Will there be no gas for consumers and so on? But it's really, you really have to clear communicate. This is not a security of supply crisis. This is a price crisis. There's enough gas in the market to supply to energy consumers and also to protected consumers. And we have all these procedures also in place. And I would like also to give as a message, you have to be prepared for these situations. And we are in the gas, I think in the gas business, we have experienced some situations on gas shortage, because you also said something about gas shortage, where this really was a gas shortage, where there were gas flow disruption and so on. And we have measures for this. We have tested all these measures. We have procedures for this also. We have also a regulation on European level where we have all these procedures in place and so on. And we have also saw in some of the situation that this solidarity also works between member states and also with energy community states. So it really is the key that we are prepared for this. And we also are prepared for this if, for example, a gas supplier also in the Austrian market would say, okay, I cannot afford to supply any longer to households, for example, because I have increasing energy costs and so on. Then these consumers, for example, will be taken over. There's also a procedure for this, a tested procedure for this, and nobody has to freeze in the winter. So it's really something that we have tested there, and it's all in place, and we are prepared for situations like this. And it's really a price crisis. It's a competition there. And it's not a security of supply situation. It is crystal clear. So nobody has to be nervous about this. But what you also, of course, see this nervousness in the market is there because traders are looking at all the data that they can get, fundamental data, and this, for example, on this storage level, this is a very sensitive data, and everybody's looking at this and say, okay, storage levels are so low. They are low because the Gazprom export storages are empty. This is also clear because all these data are transparent. But this does not mean that we have a security of supply problem.
Thank you very much. I will definitely also come back to the points that you mentioned here. But now let's look at the Austrian power grid, and with Kurt MISAK, who will tell us certainly more about challenges, not only of gas shortages, but of energy supply in general.
Yes, definitely. Also, thank you very much for the invitation. I can confirm everything which my colleague Mrs. MILLGRAMM already have said. We have really huge challenges currently in the electricity sector due to the energy transition, due to the decarbonization and the transformation of the whole electricity system. Of course, APG's core business is not gas. Our main expertise and our main expert knowledge is on electricity, but it's very clear that we have strong interdependencies, of course, with the gas sector. We have clear targets also in the electricity sector. I mean, we have a great vision and a very important mission, especially in Austria, to significantly extend the installation of renewables in Austria, but the integration is, let's say, sometimes a challenge because extending the renewables sometimes means they are built where no grid is already available. So we have many greenfield projects. We have a lot of projects in general. We have to strengthen the grid because of the international energy market. Of course, the power flows go really from west to east, from north to south, and also into the other direction then in the whole transmission grid in whole Europe. So we have to strengthen the grid. That means many, many projects. It's a lot of work. Especially in Austria, we have currently really a lack of personal resources on the electricity engineering sector. It's a strange development. Yeah, it does not only affect the electricity sector, it affects all the branches who needs electrical engineers in Austria. And we have huge costs, of course, but it's an investment in the future. It's necessary. Our main challenge, I would say, is currently that we have huge delays in the approval processes. So if we plan to strengthen the grid, sometimes, for example, the environmental impact assessment should not take more than 15 months, 9 months plus 6 months. And sometimes it takes up to 5 times as long in practice. So this is really the biggest challenge currently because we want to extend everything, we want to work on it, but sometimes the assessments take very long. Yeah? Which comes next is gas power plants are currently still needed to stabilize the grid, to make it possible that the market can operate very well. And this means we need gas to operate them. So whenever it might come to a gas crisis, it would directly affect, let's say, your security of supply in electricity in the meaning of a lack of gas power plants to stabilize the grid. This is really a very, very severe topic for us. Yeah? As I already have said, we have strong interdependencies due to this necessity of gas power plants to stabilize the grid. I want to also mention we have had disturbances in our electricity grid this year. I think it's well known on the 8th of January, also on the 24th of July. These incidents really have shown, yes, the grid is vulnerable, but it's also damned resilient. So we all have to work together, of course, to enable the future. and to ensure security of supply. And APG, especially with all of our partners, with the power plant operators and the distribution system operators, really work hardly together, and of course together with E-Control. Mrs. MILLGRAMM already mentioned that we have a very good law in Austria against scarcity situations, and we are usually performing exercises on this topic every 2 years. This is very important. So thanks. This was my first statement.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now we would like to come to Polad RUSTAMOV. We talk about gas and supply security. We have mentioned a big provider of gas with the Russian Federation, but there are also alternative routes how gas comes to Europe. And I think when we look at the TANAP gas pipeline, we have an expert with us who can tell us more about the challenges, but also opportunities with this regard.
Good morning, all. I'm Polad RUSTAMOV. I'm the TANAP Chief Technical Officer. So I hope you can hear me okay. First of all, to say, although my surname looks like Russian, I'm Azerbaijani. And actually, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to this conference, because I think looking from outside of the EU may also help in terms of formulating the views and the way forward. I may be seen as the member of a oil and gas operator, but my views are not directly of supporting oil and gas usage, but in general, we need to look at the challenge. And I think the session name, Inconvenient Truth, is very, very well selected. How inconvenient it may be, we are going through a truth. We are living this today. And when we say that, with all due respect to the comment that we do not have supply security issue, I think, yes, we may not have supply security issue today, but tomorrow, when the winter comes, when Mr. Putin decides to close the valves, we may actually realize that there may be supply security. And it's not only because he or any other country would like to cut the gas deliveries to energy deliveries to Europe, but they would need gas at their own countries as well. Different from the countries, some of the countries in southeast part of Europe and in many other countries in the world, actually, I can say that in Azerbaijan, for example, in every single village, we have gas network. So when there is a need for gas, actually gas can be delivered to the last house of last village in the country. So that's why there may be a consumption need in those countries as well. And looking at the climate impact, the clouds and the heat will not be stopping when they come to the borders of EU. If someone else somewhere else in the world actually is not even reaching coal to burn, like in India or in China, in other countries, if they are polluting environment and are going to be polluting environment for a certain period of time going forward, we can not only say that the environmental issue is only related to EU consumption. So I think we have a challenge, not only in EU, but globally. And we need to go through this transition period without blindly eliminating all fossil fuels in one go. I'm not provocating and I'm not advocating use of more gas. I'm the transporter, so how much gas is put into my pipeline will be delivered to the end users. And we are actually working on how can we improve our carbon footprint by reducing, obviously, including some hydrogen into the pipeline. So what I would like to say is that in terms of the where we are, I think the energy supply security also needs to be considered, not only with the view of today, but also tomorrow. And having alternative sources of energy would make market to be more competitive. And the monopolists or the ones we don't like because of the issues in their countries and their implementations may start looking at stopping manipulating the market, because there would be other sources of energy coming to the end users. So in terms of opportunities, obviously it would be considered probably as an advertisement presentation, but we have a good and high capacity southern gas corridor, which is not only taking gas from Azerbaijan to Turkey and to Europe, but other alternative sources can be also incorporated. And in terms of when we look at the end users, currently we are going directly to Italy, but other Southeast countries may benefit from having extra, better, less damaging hydrocarbon fuel into those countries. When we are talking about now coal being used, and when the winter comes, having smoke all over the place in some of the Southeast countries of Europe, I definitely think that we need to look at trying to get more, at least the less innocent gas from the sources which may be available to us.
Thank you very much. I would like to follow up on what you just said, and I'm very grateful that you want to talk about some inconvenient truths. You echo what Predrag GRUJICIC said, that fossil fuels are here to stay, and I guess that this is, of course, something that was echoed throughout all the presentations that we heard in the morning. But nevertheless, is the possibility to provide some sort of green gas, is this something that that would be potentially be able to be labeled as something like a green washing, or do you see that there is actually a possibility, and also extends to what you hinted in your last remark, to foster the transition from even more damaging usages of energy sources like coal? And is this something that you see as a possibility to also help in Southeast and Central Europe?
Yeah, I think first of all, as I said, when considering the sources being in alternative sources, I would say, than the Russia only, there's obviously reservoirs in the Caspian Sea under Azerbaijani sector, as well as in Turkmenistan section, and some in Mediterranean of gas. So this is kind of the natural gas that we are using at the moment. However, if we start probably taking actions rather than talking, because I know for last 2-3 years, everyone in the energy sector is talking about greener fuel, but we all know that taking action is much more important because there hasn't been any significant improvements in the technology, and there hasn't been any cost-effective technologies made available to the oil and gas companies or energy companies, let me put it like this, to make their energies greener. Now, yes, we have been talking about the introduction of some hydrogen into the TANAP pipeline, actually into the southern gas corridor, to reduce, if you like, the damage to the environment. However, as we all know, at the moment, getting hydrogen from green sources is a challenging event. I mean, simply looking at electrolyze events, how much we need to spend on electrolyzing, and actually, if we are going to use electricity to electrolyze water, and then this electricity is obtained from hydrocarbon, then what is the benefit? So I think there is a potential, but I would probably say that we need to start taking actions rather than still debating and discussing and trying to find which energy source is guilty, who is polluting environment. We all know all this. It's all good discussions that we are having. Many experts, much knowledgeable than myself, would know how to resolve these issues. But as the regulators and as end users, instead of trying to prevent sources coming into our countries by adding many legislative requirements, I think we need to call in people together and try to kind of give them a carrot rather than stick, and motivate the countries and the governments and the companies to start reducing their footprint and bringing more greener fuel into the market, into the end users, than just continue on their traditional oil and gas business.
Thank you so much. Predrag.
Yes.
The taxonomy of what is green and what is not green is a debate that is going on the EU level. You're working for an international organization that consists of the whole EU, but also partners in the region. Do you echo what Polad said, that we need more actions and less talk, and it's not so important what we define as green energy, or is this a debate that should be taken seriously?
Thanks, Sebastian. Yes, we are debating this taxonomy, of course. I remind you that in the energy community, we are following what the EU is doing. We are not really the game changer there. It's not that, you know, the European Union Commission is really asking Montenegro or Serbia what should be in taxonomy, and it's okay. It's okay. So we will get the acquis done by the EU, and then we will adapt it to our contracting parties. Adaptation means some provisions will not be applicable, and some deadlines will be a little bit prolonged, obviously. So we still don't have this very much wide debate in the energy community about taxonomy and what is green and what is not green. We know that we cannot expect any, let's say, soft loans from the European-based institutions, and in general, probably these loans will be more difficult to find in international financing level for pipelines that would bring natural gas only. This is my general, you know, definitely this will be very difficult. It doesn't mean that the other creditors, as you mentioned, Turkey, China, Russia, wouldn't be willing to credit such pipelines anyway. For example, in North Macedonia, North Macedonians are very serious about transitioning to greener fields. But on the same path, they are envisaging multiplying gas consumption, you know, natural gas, mind you. And there are only 200 households connected to this grid, and the others are power plants and industry. And they will have this distribution. There is a tender. And what do you think? Which country is very interested in having this country distribution business? Turkey, of course. You know, so they are willing to provide for more money and maybe cheaper money than European institutions. But there is a room, there is understanding, especially in the engineer, I would say, that this region needs a little bit different angle, different perspective. So I think that there is still potential for some money to get into projects, in pipeline natural gas projects, still from this public money from the European Union. Mind you, interconnector, Bulgaria, Serbia. They're talking also about Bosnian interconnector to the south with Croatia. Americans were very much willing to help Kosovo to get a gas pipeline, but Kosovo doesn't know what to do. As I said recently, although they have 99% electricity produced from lignite, the worst polluting fuel. I would say, as Mr. Rustamov said correctly, we need to communicate. We should not be so exclusive. We need to understand that different regions will need different parts of decarbonization, and the Western Balkan is exactly one of these regions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Erhard, I saw that you wanted to add something to this.
No, I don't want to add something. I'm changing my position here. I'm sitting here not as a chairman or something like that. I'm sitting here as the husband of a consumer. My wife has a house. It's a heritage from their parents in Lower Austria since years. And I think by the stories told by her ancestors and by herself, I'm getting the real problem and I want to raise it. I think you are totally right because you are connected with grids, with bigger systems and so on and so on. I'm sitting here as a consumer on the last level. I think they started heating when the winter is coming, I think by coal. They had small ovens in every room and so on and so on. And that's a change that was a big advantage by the father of my wife, I think, having an oil heating. Now they have oil heating. They have, interesting enough, and I'm coming closer to my question, an alternative. I think the company involved there, it was Neogas, not anymore existing. It's a part of EVN. Brought gas until the beginning of the house. We have a small pipeline. I know exactly where it is hidden in the earth here, which was an interesting decision. Now we are confronted with a huge campaigning on the side of the maybe the company of Lower Austria, by the regional government and so on and so on. If the change, you have a dirty heating, the mayor is spreading papers and so on and so on. You are a nasty guy having this and so on and so on. And I may tell you, and at the weekends, we are all coming together at a nice place here in this Voralpen in the Alps, sitting together and speaking about heating and about the system, because I think everybody is shivering what is happening now to us. Will we be blamed? Are we dirty people? I think using the expression dirty, which in all my deep respect to Mrs. Gewessler is always used by her, is really strange. Who wants to be dirty? I think it's a question of respect to human beings. And I think it plays a very important role. There's a certain psychological pressure on the consumer. But it's not quite clear what really to do. We cannot take this small gas pipeline because it's also dirty. It's carbon.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that you are not saying this, but this is carbon. Everybody can hear that's also bad, listening to Glasgow and so on and so on. I think using wood, it's for sure not also easy because they are cutting down the woods nearby in this area. And also, we are more than 80 years old. We have to upstairs and so on and so on. So far, my wife is always saying oil is better. The problem is that the oil is difficult to get. We were waiting for a very long time for the portion of oil now because they have enough oil, but they have no transport. Yeah. There are no drivers existing here. That's a real problem. These are the discussions on the ground in this area, facing real problems. And maybe all the messages given in the media and so on are not covering these concerns. I think that's a huge problem. Second view, I have my institute quite close to Rossauer Kaserne. This is the seat of the Defense Ministry of Austria, and always passing by a huge affiche about blackout. The Defense Ministry is always explaining we are getting a blackout. I'm not quite sure that it is a real job of a defense ministry to create concern and to create anxiety. I think I'm always, if I'm passing by this affiche, I'm a little bit shivering. Blackout is coming. But I think what is here the real reality and how can it be done in a more reasonable way? Because I always learn politics has to take anxiety from the common citizen. Now they are putting anxiety on the citizen. And I think that's a huge problem. It's also a job, beg your pardon, for your companies being involved. I think you have to do something that they are changing the strategy of information. Beg your pardon, but this is psychology for the basis.
Thank you very much, Erhard. It complements very much questions that I wanted to ask my two other panelists anyways. I think the fear of a blackout and how do we warn about this is certainly something that is a discussion and maybe fueled by the current headlines that we saw, that there's a shortage on the gas market, there's a high price, there's a problem. Now we've heard from Dr. MILLGRAMM that there isn't actually a shortage. There's not
it's more the demand surplus, that we have more demand than we have supply. But may I come in on this dirty gas, perhaps?
Absolutely. And I would want to add to this, which would have been my next question to you, actually. How do we take the consumer with us? How do we alleviate the situation for the consumer? Would, for instance, price caps be a possibility, or does that prevent maybe necessary investments? So please feel free to both of you, of course, also react to what Erhard BUSEK said.
Yes, first thing on this dirty gas, there is an easy way out of this, because I have also a heating system with gas, with dirty gas. I had one, and now I'm using 100% product with biomethane. So it's possible that you also can use this green gas in this situation. But I also would like to give this perspective on this European coordination between, I think that we are the consumers, of course, but we have suppliers. We have Russia and Norway as suppliers. And of course, they also have to, if we think about new policies and so on, we also have to communicate with these companies and these suppliers, of course. They also have to have, we have to have a stable policy, a picture, what would be the role of gas in the European countries, for example, so that also suppliers can take investment decisions on this, can say, okay, there could be a role of low carbon gases, perhaps in the EU, not only green gases and so on. So we also have to work together with our suppliers. And we have to say that in the gas market, for example, we have this supply from Russia over 50 years. So we had some problems, of course, with supply disruption. It was not always. So it's a little bit too easy to blame Russia, I think, for all these, because they also have a gas business. They see a lot of signs that we don't want to have the gas anymore in the EU, of course. So they think about different ways. They go to Asia, LNG, and China, and so on. So we also have to give clear signs what is needed from their side, I think. And we have also heard this on the Flame Conference last week, where my colleague and me were there, also from the Norwegian suppliers, for example. They also think about what is the business there, what can we deliver to EU, and so on. So we really have to communicate also with the suppliers on this. It's not only that we are consumers and say we would like to go out of fossil gas. Yes, I think the goal is clear, we have to, but how can we get there? We also need, of course, the cooperation of suppliers, perhaps, on this. I think, and I think that it's totally clear that this is not an easy way to get out of fossil fuels and to get out of gas, for example, also in Vienna. It's not easy, of course, all these apartments, houses and everything to have this phase out of fossil fuels. It's really also administrative burdens and so on. A lot of things, a lot of problems, of course, we know this. But what is really, I think, lacking at the moment is this the policies, the clear policies, also on EU level. We are waiting for this decarbonization package. This is really important to have this in place. This is the first step. Then we can have this on a national level also, and we as regulators, we also support, of course, these policies. The policies are decided on a politician level, on a political level, and regulators have to support this. It's clear, and we can do this, but it's really important that this first step is made now, as also our colleagues from TANAP said, that we have not to talk about this all the time. We have to go the first steps, and we have to do the work. Yeah, this is really important, I think. And what you said about the price caps, this is of course one other topic. How can we ease the situation on the price levels? I think we do not have an instrument for this, to be clear. We can also, just in this situation, we can also only support vulnerable cost customers who cannot afford energy. And it's not only gas, it's electricity, perhaps also other energy carriers, to financially support them directly. But we cannot get into the market and try to set prices or to cap prices or something. This would not help, because we have an integrated European market and we have an integrated gas market. And if we do something in Austria, it would not help to get prices down. So it's not really something that would help. Also not to have a price cap on end consumer prices, because there are signals also to efficient use of energy. Prices are signals there, and also we need these price signals when we think about decarbonization, of course. They have to be on a stable way. It's not very good to have these volatile prices, of course, but we have a lot of other instruments than to have a price cap. This would not help in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. MISAK, do we need to prepare our sellers for the big blackout?
Definitely not. I want to be honest. Yeah, I mean, of course, a blackout can happen at every time. It can happen this afternoon. It can happen this evening. It cannot happen. It could be that it won't happen in the next 10 years or in the next 20 years. So nobody could really seriously estimate, yes, there will be a blackout within the next 3 years, because there is no basis for a deterministic proof, let's say. What the basic truth is, it can happen. And we recently had a very good discussion with the Ministry of Defense, why they are pushing so much, why they are pushing this topic. And it was a very good discussion, which made one point very clear to me, because in the first step, I had really the same opinion as Mr. BUSEK. I thought, wow, especially we are really doing a good job. That's at least our own opinion about ourselves. Yeah? I mean, why is somebody else pushing this topic so hard? Yeah, but we are doing a very good job. Yeah, and they said, we all know it might happen, and the biggest problem is to keep up the public safety and security. It's the core task of the police and of the military forces when it really develops to be very extreme or so. Yeah, and their main topic is, or their main challenge is, that the public expects somebody to come to them to bring food, to bring other essential goods in a case of a blackout. And this can result into a problem for public safety and security, because there is no resilience in the public. Nobody takes the topic serious, so nobody has a good stock at home for it to at least survive over the next 2 or 3 days without power. This is the main topic. They just want to have a very, let's say, a huge advertising action, and how to really address the people, in a way that they say, okay, it might happen, it's a serious topic, okay, now I'm really willing to go to the supermarket and buy a package of, let's say, canned meat and whatever, mineral water and so on. This is the point. They just wanted to address the persons, the people, the public in a way that they really go to the supermarket. And unfortunately, we all know this is delicate. how to solve this problem. Yeah, maybe you just solve it by addressing it over the anxious level. Yeah, that's a bad thing, but to be honest, yeah, no other better option is available apparently. So this is the main reason. Yeah, but I can ensure we are really very well coordinated with all of our partners. We are doing assessments for security of supply. We are monitoring the grid. We are exchanging real-time telemetry data with all of our partners to do everything that it won't happen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So hopefully your anxiety about upcoming blackouts could be a little bit alleviated in that sense. If there are other questions, please feel free to ask them. And hopefully also people joining us online can, I remind you again, pose questions in the chat. Yeah, Gerhard. I remind you again, pose questions in the chat. Yeah, Gerhard.
Sorry, gents. I'm not sure if the gentleman talking is on mute or not. Couldn't hear anything.
Okay, sorry. Now it's I just mentioned that the EU is probably not enough in charge of energy issues, and I remembered Nabucco pipeline. We tried hard from Austrian side, but the support of EU member states and EU itself was rather lukewarm, I would say. That's why I'm quite happy that TANAP is existing, because we certainly need more competition. I think at China, when I think it was even Xi Jinping who said we don't want to be dependent more than 25% on one supplier, not more than, and we are dependent on Russia more than 60%. I'm also questioning a part of another source like Azerbaijan. What about some of the fields which are existing within the EU, like the offshore fields in Romania, which are still not developed? With the current price, it should be quite interesting to develop these fields. And the other thing is also LNG. Again, thinking at China is importing mostly LNG. It is more expensive. However, the prices as they are now, up and down, probably one could also think at LNG as an alternative in order to have a secure supply. So please, could you answer my question? Thank you.
So I think we have three questions to actually three people. So that one time the European Union part, then also mentioning the alternatives to Polad RUSTAMOV, and then also in general the supply. Maybe we start with you.
On this LNG topic, I think also on the diversification of the sources, for example, of course we are very highly dependent on Russian gas in Austria, but we have a very long relationship, I think, with Gazprom, of course. But we have, I think, on the EU level, this topic was really very important when we had this crisis in 2006 and 2009, and then we had this security of supply regulation, for example. Then we have seen that we need a much more flexible infrastructure. We have this also this obligation to have reverse flows implemented there, and some other topics. And we have built, I think, some more LNG facilities. This was also in Poland and Lithuania and so on. We have seen this topic, but what of course this crisis, this price crisis, would show that perhaps there would be some renaissance of long-term contracts, of course. This is something that the Russian side said also in this for this topic. We have a market which is more short-term, much more short-term than it was before. And of course, we have also LNG market, which is much more short-term in Europe, for example. And perhaps then there would be also more long-term contracts than long-term, not like we saw in the gas business before 20 years or 30 years, but 5 years or 3 years. This is long term today. This could be something that we can assure or secure LNG imports, because then of course they would be more expensive, but they are already very expensive today. So there could be of course an incentive to have more longer term contracts also for the companies, the trading companies, to secure this supply. But for example, in Austria, we do not have access to LNG terminals, but we are a very integrated market. So we are depending 60% on Russian gas, but we, of course, the price level is the same that we have in other countries. So it's not really a disadvantage now in this moment for us. But we can also, of course, import gas via the German hub, for example, and so on. And it's always the question, what is then the marginal supply that we need in Austria, for example. And we have a lot of storage capacities, of course, that we can use also in this situation when the prices are very high. And this also is, of course, a big advantage for us in Austria.
Thank you. Can you turn off your microphone, please? Mm-hmm. Thank you. So the other question that came was directed towards more or less. First, the European Union, and we know that you are not the European Union and you can't speak on behalf of the European Union, but nevertheless, I imagine that also within the energy community, you face the problem that there are sovereign states participating and the EU is not acting as a coherent actor in that regard.
Thanks, Sebastian. I cannot represent the EU anyhow. I'm a Serbian nationality, so even in that matter, I don't have much to do with the EU except living in this beautiful EU country. Okay, so yes, European Union law is actually changing. All the treaties, and Dr. BUSEK knows this much better, guaranteed energy mix per member state is a thing that you don't touch. It's a sovereign thing. Now we hear that by 2050 you have to be carbon neutral. So there is already a shift towards this sovereignty, what the state really can do. You can do a lot of energy mix, provided by 2050 you emit zero CO2, or I don't know, 55% less in 2030, and so on and so forth. So there is this sovereignty is already gone. Then you have two very interesting cases, interestingly, Germany and Poland, where the German European Court said that you can't even, for a regulator to be completely independent, even the legislators, even the parliament cannot order them or prescribe them what they have to do. And you have completely different ruling in Poland, where the Supreme Court of this country said that European Union law does not apply. I think that we will have a lot of this clashing interpretation of the European law. I think Europe will become something like United States in a way, with all these Republican and Democratic states. It's going to be very interesting, and how the federal law, if you want, European law, especially energy law, will be applied. This will be very interesting for us to understand. In this context, European law and the decarbonization agenda, energy community treaty would have never been possible to be signed, because in the energy community treaty, you still have this completely equality of parties. Montenegro has one and single vote, just like European Union represented by the Commission. Today, I don't think that would be possible. And I cannot resist, but also to answer to Dr. BUSEK's concerns, which were really very, very honest. And this is also what I see as a big problem in how our political elite in this case in Niederösterreich, is communicating this very big problem to our citizens, and they are absolutely turning them away to other parties, of course. Because why is this lady anxious about? Well, because she's probably not delivering better life for the citizens, but she can only pick up something which is at hand to her and pinpoint at you, pointing finger, you know, that you are a bad citizen. This is not how we should communicate this issue. Climate change is a big problem, and we need to solve it. But the climate change solving will not solve the social problems and economical problems that you have. And I'm talking about Austria, which is a relatively well-off country. I'm talking about the other countries. So this is the political elite does not understand that they should listen to common customers and address their concerns and not finger point at them what they should do. This is, you know, we will get Trump then in a couple of years here in Austria as well.
Okay, thank you. I refrain from commenting on the last thing that you said, and also on the possibility of the EU member countries splitting up into Democrats and Republicans. It's a whole different discussion. Very interesting point, though. I nevertheless would also like to include Polad RUSTAMOV into the discussion because Gerhard mentioned the alternative routes and the necessity to find these alternative routes. And I might want to add, I mean, there's a slight danger that we talk about the blackout too much, that suddenly maybe the energy vanishes. But is there a discussion also in Azerbaijan about these topics, or as you mentioned, that each and every tiny village has the possibility to be on the grid? This is not something that is dominating the discourse.
Yeah, so I'll probably combine a few things and we'll also echo Dr. MILLGRAMM's comments about the capping or kind of working with cooperating with the sources, with the suppliers. So starting from the last end of your question, in the countries like Azerbaijan and in Turkmenistan or in Russia, the government strategies are developed around ensuring that domestic use is not handicapped. So there are plans and there are reservoirs. But this is said, for example, for Azerbaijan, the Shah Deniz 2 gas, which is currently being delivered to EU, and as we started from end of 2020, now we have delivered around 6 BCMA of gas to TAP pipeline. And starting 1st of January 2020, the deliveries will be reaching 10 BCMA as per the contract. Those resources, reservoirs, if you like, are kind of reserved for EU deliveries. So why I say this, because when we talk about the benefits of TANAP for Azerbaijan, if not for nothing else, if not for economical reasons, TANAP is a certain gas corridor is quite important for Azerbaijan to be linked to EU. This is bringing more opportunities for development in the country. For example, in Turkey as well as in Azerbaijan, and now the government strategy is to develop production facilities, not only gas production. For example, the confectionery in Turkey, the dresses that are being sold in Turkey, in Europe, for example, those factories are trying to reduce their carbon footprint. You can import renewable energy related equipment to Azerbaijan without any customs tax. So the countries are trying to be, these countries are trying to be connected to EU. That's why the promises that have been given, the contracts that have been signed with the end users in EU are very well supported by the governments along with making sure that their domestic usage is not handicapped. As for coming to the sources, additional sources that can be fed into the Southern Gas Corridor, there's a big reservoir in the Caspian Sea, gas reservoir called Shafak and Asiman, which can be developed, which is known, the reserves are there, but can be developed. Turkmenistan gas, especially after resolving the status of Caspian Sea between sea and lake between countries, now Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan is cooperating on developing further gas fields and transporting gas to southern, joining the Turkmenistan gas to TANAP pipeline, which means to the southern gas corridor. So I think in terms of the resources being available, that there are resources that can be added and brought to the southern gas corridor. As far as the cooperation and talking to the suppliers, as Dr. MILLGRAMM mentioned, as long as the end users are cooperating and discussing the requirements, for example, to make their production greener, to bring greener hydrocarbon, if you like, those I would suggest need to be openly discussed with suppliers. And the countries like Azerbaijan would definitely want to cooperate in such discussions. There are government strategies. State-owned company of Azerbaijan has actually created a big, if you like, task force, group of people working together to identify potential source of hydrocarbon, hydrogen that can be injected into the southern gas corridor and delivered to EU. So these kind of initiatives are all in place. However, as we've been discussing, and I'm trying to kind of note this very importantly, if we start deciding what we want and try to understand realities of life, being for the time being, I think we all, or most of us agree that the transition fuel for us for next decade maybe is gas, which is better than other coal or cutting the wood trees down. I think we just need to start putting our minds together and start discussing things and realistic factors. And those countries, I would definitely believe, would want to be participant in this transition period in ensuring the supply security to the end users.
Thank you very much. We are slowly approaching the end of our discussion, so this is the last possibility to ask questions. We have Erhard.
Beg your pardon, it's not a question, it's only some remarks concerning the statement that it is not possible, makes no sense to create a common community concerning. I'm really totally against these statements. I think, what is the reality? I think the climate change is covering the globe. No borders possible. If we are looking for solutions, why are we raising borders? I think it is in the interest of the different countries, because they have the idea, they are getting more power, because they have more possibilities, and so on and so on. But this is extremely dangerous. I think there's a question of, may I say, equality. And what I'm really fearing, and it is even starting in such a small country like in Austria, we are making out of all the solutions ideology. I think ideology is deciding instead of us, instead of solutions which are practical down to the ground and in favor of the common citizens. It's a question to you, what can we do to change this approach and to get it here more positive in the direction of solutions, because the wrong people are always living out of these ideological questions. That's a long story for the human history so far, but I don't want to touch it. That's my first question. My second question, I learned that hydrogen is a good solution by ecological reasons. Why are so many difficulties to create more common efforts going in this direction? I think this I do not understand. Is it technically not so much developed? It might be, as far as I have some knowledge. The second question, a little bit in connection, is also concerning the connection systems. I learned, I'm not an expert, concerning electricity. We are moving electricity from south to the north, but by the windmills and the East Sea, we are moving electricity from the north to the south. And the technical systems are not adapted. I don't understand this, beg your pardon. But I believe that is really true. What can we do to solve this? I think that's not really a problem. I want to do one remark concerning Russia. I'm not a fan of the current Russian political system, but I have to say, and it was already mentioned by Mrs. MILLGRAMM, I think the Russians are sending gas to Vienna, Austria for a very long time. As far as I know, only one day they have not been possible in these years and years and years to send it. May I say, I'm also a fan of political stability. I believe the Russians that they will provide us with gas because they're living out of the money they are earning by this. And it is extremely necessary for their political system. I think we have to do some considerations also. That does not mean that I am a fan of Putin. I think I'm a fan of stability also in Russia, because nobody knows what it means if it is volatile and so on. So the general question to you is, how can we develop to get a more rational discussion on this? It is not really rational. And I think sometimes I have my doubts that ratio, that Vernunft in German, is really existing here. I think we have exchange of arguments, we are really strange. You are sitting here on important enterprises and so on and so on. What is your idea that we can create more ratio, more rationality in this discussion for solving the problems? I think that's my interest. My wife wants to have heating. That's the only question she has. That's rational. Totally rational. And I'm extremely grateful to her. I think also political decisions, you know, my love to Lower Austria and the government and they made a decision, I think, to divide how many windmills shall be in all the areas. The problem is that the geography is not showing this fact. I'm living in the beginning of the Alps. I think you can do 2 or 3 windmills on the top. It costs more. We do have some connections for the electricity produced and so on and so on. It's crazy. And I think not even this craziness is discussed. I don't want to speak about media. Speak about.
Thank you very much. Speaking of media, we have another question, please.
Yes, good morning. My name is Gregor Meyer. I'm a correspondent for the German press agency in Southeast Europe. And my question is about the price caps in the current price crisis. The share of vulnerable population in these countries of Southeastern Europe itself is much bigger than in a wealthy country like Austria. And we have seen, or we are seeing governments like the Hungarian government of Viktor Orban, who decidedly say there's a price cap for the consumers in the heating season. And you can say he's a populist, and he's in fact facing a very challenging election again in next April. And you can be for sure that in Hungary there will be no price hikes until next spring for the consumers, even if he owns in his house a swimming pool which is heated. So all this continues. How are they doing that? What is the rationality behind it? And I must add, in Romania, we have at least a commitment, a pledge by the acting government that they also say no price hikes for the consumers.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to use this opportunity to bring it into one final round. We have heard a lot about rationality, solidarity, necessity. My final round of questions, and I would like to ask you to also then put answers to the questions that have been asked by Erhard, BUSEK and Gregor Meyer into this answer. Wouldn't it be rational to have some sort of real energy solidarity on a European level? And that is not only meant when I say European, I don't only mean the EU, I mean the whole of Europe. Wouldn't that alleviate the situation and help to maybe lessen this divide and conquer approach that some of the energy producers are trying to set? Predrag, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Sebastian, for this. Also to Dr. BUSEK. At least one good point for Dr. BUSEK is that he has a rational wife. This is not always easy to hear, so you should be happy with
I'm happy about it. 55 years.
So that's something. Where was I? Okay, so energy solidarity, real energy solidarity across Europe, I very skeptical. My answer is no. I have even a proof for this. We are going to adopt this year, after many years, security supply regulation, Carola mentioned, where we scrapped out solidarity provisions because, you know, it's maybe too much for the energy community. And of course, it would be way too much for solidarity between a member state and the contracting party, God forbid. Although I truly believe that Ukraine alone could provide more solidarity to the member states than member states to Ukraine in some cases. But nevertheless, solidarity, I'm very skeptical. Rational and ideology. Ideology is, unfortunately, you cannot dismantle this thing. You cannot have a rational, politicians. Ideology is connected also with money and with funding. So usually these very exclusive statements are connected with of course, well-funded sources, and ideology is always connected to it. Ideology and energy goes together. I also don't think we can just rationalize. We need to communicate. That's true, and to have a compromise. Finally, what you asked about the cap prices and how to protect vulnerable customers and so on and so on. There are some practical examples. I will just give you in Ukraine, when we started to reform this gas market 6-7 years ago after this revolution. And then the prices for households had to go up. IMF was involved almost 10 times. And then we targeted vulnerable customers in this country. And you rightly said, at that point, it was not very good net, you know, we not very targeted. At certain point, 60% of households received some kind of, support. 60%, and you know that even 10% in Europe is a lot. Then with the World Bank, we managed to target this to less than 30, and so on and so forth for this vulnerability. And of course, Naftogaz and all the other producers and the TSOs with the bigger income could contribute to budget to solve this problem. This is one problem. This is one point. The second point was that this year, with also unsecure prices in Ukraine, it's always a case. And it's always a political thing, because people, you know, they spend unfortunately 50% of their income to energy. Then Naftogaz offered something like long-term supply contracts at fixed price. At fixed price, mind you, not at capped price. We said this is okay, fixed price is okay, Naftogaz can do whatever they want, to up to 3 years. So this is something that you can a little bit play with your national incumbent company if you have one. Now, if you have only foreign suppliers like Georgians have, this is a little bit difficult. But the cap prices nobody want really to implement.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I think on these price caps, I've already said this before. I think it's, of course, it's the rationale behind this in Hungary seems to be political. It's like this, but of course the gas markets are structurally different. This is clear. So it's different in the energy community gas markets. Perhaps we would not need this instrument in Austria, because we have, for example, we can choose between different suppliers which offer a price cap like this. They say, okay, there's a fixed price for 1 year. This is, of course, they have a stable price then, and you can choose between different suppliers. We don't need this instrument here. we think it's for us also, because we don't have this high share of vulnerable customers. It's much better to support these vulnerable customers directly. It's much better and much more efficient than to have this price cap, because somebody has to pay the bill for the gas prices. And if it's not the end consumer, then it goes along the way. So somebody has to pay for this. And on solidarity, I think we have developed this framework in the SOS regulation, and these solidarity agreements are not really a success story, we have to say, because we are working on this. The Commission said, okay, this is a framework and you have to work on this and you have to conclude all these contracts. We have, at the moment, we have just one contract which is concluded between Denmark and Germany, and it's not really a success story. Because we are coming, of course, we are always in favor of competition. And we see also in this moment that if you have an integrated market and if you have the infrastructure, flexible infrastructure in place, that gas can flow where there's a price signal, that there's perhaps a gas shortage, but there's gas needed, for example, then there would be a price signal and the gas would flow in this direction. So we are in favor, always in favor, to have competitive markets there, to have the infrastructure in place that is flexible. And this also does a lot for security of supply, much more than just always have to put this in a framework and to have all these formalities, for example. And also one thing that I think about this, getting from ideology to be more rational, I think it's always when you have to implement your ideas. If you think about ideology, if you think you have to implement this, you have to have a framework right for this, you have to think about heating systems, how you can change the heating systems and so on, then you are getting more and more pragmatic, because you see the problems there, and also, yes, and I think this is really something to just not to talk the talk, but to walk the walk, and then you will see where the problems are, and then there will be the pragmatic approach will come with this.
Thank you very much. I just realized that Mr. Rustamov has to leave very, very soon. So, MISAK, please, apologies. I will take him first, so he can say his last round. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, and apologies for having to leave. So I think very beneficial discussion about the transition, as well as the cooperation with the parties outside the EU, which I believe can help the solidarity issue as well, and not only try to resolve the problem within the borders of EU. As we say, not only the energy security is associated with the EU, but it's global problem, as well as the environmental impact of using dangerous and hazardous hydrocarbon fuels. So I think cooperation in the long run, and without unbiased cooperation, unbiased discussions about how we can work together would benefit. As for the price capping, again, not directly impacting my business as the transporter. However, I think the suppliers may be impacted and may refrain from additional investments to bring greener energy sources into the suppliers, as the capping may impact their interests. So with all that, I'd like to thank you very much for the event, and for especially this session. And I think with good cooperation and open discussions, and as again was said, walking the talk, we can cooperate and try to eliminate the impact of this changing and difficult times on the end users.
Thank you very much for also bringing this perspective into this discussion. All the best. Thank you for your time. But before I say goodbye,
Let me please make a very final remark on what has Mr. BUSEK addressed with more and more making use of H2 gas and why are the structures of the grids, why do we have to strengthen it, why it is necessary to transport large-scale powers from north to south. Yeah? Of course, we have this Binnenmarktrichtlinie, we have this internal market directive or so, which wanted to strengthen the market. So it's a natural thing to transport energy from A to B. But why is it necessary to transport such large scales of energies? Of course, renewables are the best thing for the future. Sometimes they have an excess of infeed, which is needed at another location, maybe, that yields the necessity to transport it over a very long, not duration, over a very large scale distance, of course. Yeah? But basically, we have currently maybe a storage problem, a storage challenge, because there are some times where really we will have an excess in feed of energy, and other periods like winter periods where there is maybe no wind or so. So how to get this excess of energy into periods where it is maybe needed a bit better. Yeah? So we will discuss this more and more. There are many efforts to install power to gas facilities, for example. These initiatives have started already. Basically, of course, we will make more and more use of flexibilities. This is very important. That means that also very small customers or industries can participate more and more, can share their resources more and more to the market, not just large-scale power plants or market participants. So we will really pull all the registers in the future, and we will open the market more and more to smaller entities. This is very important to, let's say, to limit the necessity of transport large-scale energies over a very long distance. Just a final comment.
Thank you so much to everyone who was involved, but especially to my panelists that came on a Monday morning to discuss this with us. I think if I would sum up the inconvenient truth of this panel is that, first of all of you get some canned meat or vegetables or whatsoever, just in case. And we hope that we have more canned energy in the future, because there is no supply problem at the moment, but there is rather a distribution and sort of storage problem, if I come to this. And we also learned that definitely the energy community is a very important player, but not the European Union as an international organization. It's just one of the contracting parties. Thank you so much. We have a very, very short 8-minute break, so get yourself an espresso instead of maybe verlängerte, and join us again for the second panel, which is called Renewable Trust Regional Allies for Europe's Energy Security. And as I'm sitting on the panel, I'm very happy.
Please, 15 minutes. I will speak less afterwards.
And ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite you for coffee and tea downstairs at the cafeteria. Yeah, please feel free.
Okay, I would like to warmly welcome you at the second discussion today. My name is Daniela APAYDIN. I'm a research associate at the IDM, and I'm very much looking forward to our second panel discussion today, titled Renewable Trusts, Regional Allies for Europe's Energy Security. So we talked already pretty much or tackled some aspects of this topic, but I think we have plenty of questions to go deeper into the cooperation aspect of this issue. And we are going to talk about the past, present, and future energy partnerships in the Danube region. I'm very happy to have Diplom Engineer Magister Gerhard GAMPERL with us today. He's Director for Corporate Development at the Verbund AG, Austria's leading electricity company. 40% of Austria's electricity demands are covered by Verbund, most of it by hydropower. Welcome, Mr. GAMPERL. I hope that we will learn more about upcoming challenges of the Verbund, and not only regarding the energy supply, but also regarding the infrastructure system and maybe the distribution of electricity. If you have followed the activities of the IDM, you might know that we don't only look at Austria, we always aim to look beyond the Austrian horizon, and therefore we will specifically discuss cross-border partnerships today. For this, I'm cordially welcoming Katarzyna Davidova from the think tank Europeum, located in Prague. Katarzyna works as a researcher at the Europeum and as a project coordinator at the Center for Transport and Energy, a non-profit governmental organization which focuses on the environmental and climate impacts of transportation and energy production. Great to virtually welcoming you with us, Katarzyna, and I hope you hear us. And
yes.
we'll see you later on as well. Yes, perfect.
Hello. Thank you for the invitation.
Great. So please allow me a quick promotion here at this point, because we had the honor to do a podcast with Katarzyna recently for the IDM podcast series Central Europe Explained, CEE, on the topic Global Warming Does Not Have Borders, Climate Neutral by 2050, a Common European Struggle. So if you're interested in the topic and would like to, in general, get to know our podcast, then I do a little bit of self-promotion here and would be happy to have new listeners after today. So the initiative of our podcast sits right to my left. I welcome political scientist and managing director of the IDM, Mr. Sebastian SCHÄFFER. Hello, Sebastian. Sebastian just recently authored an article for our media partner, Fair Observer, on the recent gas crisis and the EU's dependency of natural gas deliveries from Russia. We will most likely tackle this topic more later on. But before that, I would like to start the discussion with a quick warm-up questions to my panelists. Perhaps you can explain a little bit from maybe from your respective national perspectives why energy politics is so strongly connected with geopolitics, maybe especially in this region. It would be great to collect some examples or cases for current struggles of your respective home countries or country of your choice, so that we get an idea why energy issues urgently need regional cooperation. So whoever wants to start, any volunteers? Maybe Sebastian, you want to start?
I'm happy to. I already warmed up in speaking since the first panel, Daniela. Thank you so much. It's interesting starting question, and if in my case I would look more in my country of origin, Germany, one of the major points that is currently being discussed is, of course, Nord Stream 2, and that is even a challenge in the formation of a new government. There are good arguments why I would understand that there is a necessity. I can only listen to experts because I'm not an expert myself on energy, but the geopolitical implication is something that I follow. And I mean, having lived in the region where Nord Stream 2 ends, it's an economic factor. It's also a factor of course, national interest, a reaction to the challenges that have arisen. We've talked about gas delivery disruptions, 2006, 2009, for reasons that we can discuss. One of the major challenges that I see in this whole thing is that it has a huge implication on a European level, and not only on an EU level. We discuss here the point of solidarity that has been mentioned in the first panel, because as it is not as resilient as it, from my perspective, could be, we do not have the benefits from an additional pipeline like Nord Stream to what I see about this. And we must also not forget that we, in this case, are weakening partners even outside the European Union, and here mainly Ukraine. And so this geopolitical struggle in our target region, but also in the Eastern Partnership and for European solidarity is something that I would say is one of the most important at the moment.
Thank you, Sebastian. Mr. GAMPERL, what is your case that you would put in this regard?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm here sitting for Verbund, which, as you said before, the biggest Austrian utility, and I'm more or less representing the utilities and all the challenges that we are facing now. And I want to refer what I heard from Dr. BUSEK, which I know him from decades, and he said here in the break, it's very difficult for windmills being erected in Lower Austria or wheresoever in Austria. The same is in Bavaria. I learned that only 3 windmills have been commissioned last year in whole Bavaria. And to come to your question, my answer is it needs an international division of labor, international division of responsibilities, and international division of generation and transport and storage of energy sources. We have a very tight and tough target regime within the European Union. We want to be carbon free by 2050, maybe 2045. And these new regimes, they are a real challenge for the European countries, because what we know is, as we are dependent now from coal, oil, and gas from the different regions in this world, if you look into the energy future, there might be a shift into hydrogen, especially when we talk about green hydrogen, and we don't have the space, we don't have the possibilities to produce all the green hydrogen that will be needed in Europe and the Central Europe region. So the clear answer is, as we do have now international relations, and we talked about coal and gas pipelines to Russia whatsoever, we are going to see the shift and the change into the new sources of energy like hydrogen, and there might come up quite different regions, whether this is North Africa or this is Saudi Arabia and Middle East region. So what we now have to do is we have to prepare when we want to tackle this energy transition problem. We have to prepare new alliances, and this is not only within Europe, but this is global, on a global perspective, as it is now and as it is today.
Thank you very much. So Verbund is looking for new alliances. I'm looking forward to learn more about that part. But before this, Katarzyna, would you like to join us also with a case of struggle in maybe Czechia?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's definitely important to talk about the geopolitical dimension of the energy transformation, and I'm glad we're having this discussion today. If you look at the discussion in the Czech Republic among the Czech politicians and in the media, it would almost seem like the Czech Republic is an island on its own, because the discussion on energy focuses very solely on the idea of self-sufficiency, that we need to produce all the energy we need ourselves, and we need to be 100% self-sufficient, which is one of the obstacles actually right now to our moving forward, to moving beyond coal and moving forward with the green transition, because that's one of the arguments that's being used very often, that without our coal we wouldn't be energetically self-sufficient. So in my eyes, actually, this discussion is desperately needed also in the Czech Republic to have. And I believe the future of energy lies in more enhanced cooperation among member states in the EU, also outside of the EU, as it was mentioned, but especially in the Central and Eastern European region, I think there is a lot of potential for increased grid connectivity and increased cooperation on energy issues. But so far it hasn't been advanced as much as it could, precisely because lots of member states view their own energy sources as sort of sacred, and they don't want to give up on them. That's why Poland and Czech Republic and others who have lots of deposits of coal are sticking to them as much as they are. And yeah, maybe just one more thing to note on that. We see the world is changing, Europe is changing, and the players right now who might be big exporters of electricity, such as the Czech Republic, we export 1/3 of the electricity we produce. They might not do that in the future, because as we move towards more cleaner, renewable energy, there will be other countries that will have more excess of electricity than we do. And it's of course hard for some countries to swallow this. They don't want to lose this benefit, and therefore it's very important to be honest about the transition and what it entails, but also show the benefits of increased interconnectivity in terms of electricity flows in Europe. And there are also other benefits for countries like Czechia that they can reap from the green transformation. They just have to accept that maybe in 10, 20, 30 years, we won't be exporting electricity anymore. We might be even importing it, but it's not the end of the world. And we shouldn't see ourselves as an island in this.
Thank you, Katarzyna. So that's, let's say, a transition in a mental transition maybe necessary in the upcoming years, as your case of struggle that you presented. Maybe because I have the opportunity to have Mr. GAMPERL here next to me from the Verbund, I think we cannot not talk in this regard about the Danube. I would really like to ask you, Mr. GAMPERL, at this point, where do you see the energy, the potential of the Danube nowadays as an energy source? Because some say, okay, the capacities, at least in Austria, are pretty much limited by now. There are some cases in history that showed also struggles of cross-border cooperation. So exactly. So I would be very interested what you say. What's the potential nowadays? Is it an important aspect nowadays, or are we going directly to hydrogen?
Okay, thank you very much for this question. My answer is we do have limited space. We do have limited possibilities to increase renewable generation in a large scale in Austria. This is a pity, because we do have very tough targets. In Austria, for example, we want to produce 100% of the electricity until 2030 only out of renewables. From a balancing perspective, this is the one thing. We want to be carbon neutral by 2040. But if you talk to experts, no one really believes that the 2030 goals could be matched. It's really a pity, because there's a lot of awareness, there's a lot of openness. Yeah, there's the private capital who wants to invest,
but we have certain limitations. And we already heard it in the panel in the morning. We do have the problems with the permissioning process. For example, APG, we are the mother company of APG. It took us some 20 years to erect and to commission the big power line that you see from the Südautobahn. 20 years from the very first beginning where we said we want to build until the commissioning date where the first electricity was transported. So 20 years. Where the commissioning processes, this is not only an Austrian problem, it's a European problem. So when we talk about the Danube, sometimes we say we would, if we had a wish, we would like to have a second Danube in Austria. And then to introduce new power stations, we are happy that we have those power stations because more than 60% of the electricity generation in Austria is out of hydropower. But as I said before, the increase is very much limited. But there's a certain aspect when you ask me about Danube. I also tackled the issue of hydrogen, green hydrogen. We are together in a big trans-European consortium out of states, out of corporates, financing institutions or whatsoever. Most of you probably know the IPCEI regime, which is a regime in Europe that allows the member states to fund certain projects of higher interest. And the initiative that we are about to start, and we are still optimistic and positive, is that we call it hydrogen at Blue Danube. We want to erect a lot of windmills in Romania, new windmills. So from the taxonomy point, it's newly erected renewables. And from that windmills, we want to produce green hydrogen. And this green hydrogen could be either transported via trains or it could be transported via the river Danube. And then you transport it in big ships to for example, to Linz, where we have the big steel mills and the chemical plants, and also transport it to Bavaria, where we have the famous Bavarian chemical triangle. So this is new initiatives that we want to promote in order to give push to transnational corporations. And as you said, what could be the role of River Danube? It could be especially from the transporting side, because as we have the transport for coal on the Danube, as we have the gas pipelines in future times, green hydrogen could also be in a heavily scale transported on the River Danube. So this is one of the initiatives that we hope that we can realize within the next few years.
Thank you very much. So you already mentioned cross-border cooperation, in this case with Romania. Just one follow-up question would be, how do you avoid structures like, as you mentioned in North Maroš, when it comes to facilitate or to work or have a project in the region, and for example also to deal with protest movements or with environmentalists that might be concerned. What are your, as a cooperation, what are your lessons learned to deal with these issues in advance already?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the answer is information. It's dialogue and to have plan Bs. Yeah, if you're not able to realize those projects, you need to have other projects, and that's why we are thinking more about international projects, international relations. When you look into the strategy of Verbund, it's three new pillars. The one is renewables in Central Europe and in Southern Europe, because you have big solar farms in South Europe. You have parts in Southern Europe where also windmills have a good space for production of renewable energy. So this is the expansion in the renewable energy. The second is to go into electromobility. and the third is green hydrogen. Why is electromobility from our perspective very important? We talked about the challenges and the obstacles and whatsoever. In the end, it's the states, it's the countries, it's the governments who put forward in their legislations a framework. And if the German government says from 2035 onwards, it's not allowed to sell any combustion vehicles, then this is a massive challenge for the German car manufacturers. And what are they doing? Billions of billions they transfer from combustion vehicles into e-mobility. Yeah. So we see if we have a certain legislative framework, then there is a very tremendous shift also from the industry, also from the financing institutions to go into these transition processes. And if the German car manufacturers make this big change, you also need to have those charging stations. And that's why we're entering. It used to be the oilers to have the charging stations. In future, probably it's the utilities to own the charging facilities, because you can charge your car at home, you can charge it at the petrol station, at the station, but you can also charge your car when you go to Billa and Hofer or whatsoever, or you use a public parking lot. So that's why we are entering the e-mobility business very heavily. So this is part of the answer. And then also I would prefer something about green hydrogen, because I really see a future. This was also a question of Dr. BUSEK. What are the obstacles about green hydrogen? These are the three pillars of our strategy, of all the utilities, I have to say and confess.
Thank you very much. So Verbund is definitely also broadening its portfolio in this regard as a lesson learned from past experiences. As we know in Austria, from, for example, Zwentendorf, we also learned lessons there, and alternatives are definitely always a good idea, or plan Bs. But it's also, of course, as we have it in our title, the energy partnerships also need trust as a very basic attitude, let's say, towards such issues, how to approach problems like energy shortages, supply issues, or distribution issues, as we learned today. So Sebastian, you were discussing the recent gas crisis in panel 1. Perhaps you can sum up a bit the main findings personally, and also regarding regional cooperation. So what alliances do we already have? What partners do we need to get on board in the region, and how to successfully work together? And what, I know it's a hard question, what's about these trust issues that we have in the region when it comes to energy supply security?
Yeah. It's a big question. I maybe start with the easier part, which is the question of trust and alliances in the region. I think when we look at what energy entails and which areas it scratches and how it reaches into, the example of a discussion in Lower Austria every week, because you're afraid how to, if you are dirty, if you are able to pay the bills for the rising heating costs, etc., that tackles the very core of societies in national states. So in order to function as a state, this is something that you need to provide, and therefore this trust in working cross-border is of course something that we've seen that in the development of the recent months, when it comes to push and shove, the own country is the country that is looking inwards first before it looks across borders. As much as I and we all at IDM regret this, but this is the reality. And therefore, in order to enhance solidarity and cross-border cooperation in the region, this trust needs to be not only strengthened. I don't know how to actually properly foster this, because that brings me to the point when you say, sum up the discussion in the first part. We have, obviously, that would be my takeaway. We have institutions, international institutions that tackle this, like the energy community. We have the understanding from producers we would have to discuss additionally, but providers, deliverers, and consumers, that there is a necessity to work together, to provide, to alleviate current challenges that are arising. My question and my takeaway at the end would still nevertheless be, if it's so much beneficial to have the solidarity, why is it not really put into practice? There have been good examples mentioned, but on a political level, there is absolutely no solidarity. And there's always, in the end, when it comes to European Union foreign policy acting, it is up to the member states, and everyone is afraid to give up sovereignty. And maybe to break it down to the very first question and the challenge that I have mentioned, Nord Stream 1 is operating now for a decade. Why did we not learn our lessons from the challenges that were arising? Because they have more or less been, at least politically, the same questions. And the fear of Poland, that a deal between Germany and the Russian Federation historically never worked out for them very well, is something that we can laugh at. And it's very shrill to call this a new Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, as it has been by representatives from peace. But on the other hand, if we are not understanding that these underlying fears have a certain validity in the discussion, and why not include that with all the actors and build stronger regional alliances, then this energy solidarity, and even, I would have to say, the energy union, will remain a nice framework and a nice goal, but it will be very shallow, if not to say empty.
Thank you. So a hard issue on the question of trust and historical legacies. It's very good that you mentioned that, because it fits nicely to the point that I would like to discuss with Katarzyna. You're observing the implementation perception of the Green Deal and the transformation in the V4 countries, the Visegrad 4, very closely. And I would be very interested in your take on the trust among this group or multi on this cooperation within the V4, and how high is there the trust, do you think, into the transformative power of this deal? And maybe also if you give a bit of conflict lines among countries of the V4. I mean, there's one case coming up recently, and it's more of a it's not a news yet, but we have been reading about a potential deal of Cyprian oligarch preparing a purchase of a gas provider in Slovakia, and this Hungarian providers purchasing the gas in Slovakia, and this might lead to a bit of a diplomatic crisis between Slovakia and Hungary, also showing that these cleavages, which are very long historical cleavages among countries in this region, among V4 members, how can this still be an issue when it comes to this transfers or this purchases? So maybe you can just explain a little bit what is going on in the V4 countries in this regard.
Definitely. So maybe first to the first part of the question, how is the Green Deal perceived in the V4 countries, and what's the level of trust that it will truly be a transformative deal? I mean, if I put it very bluntly, there is not much trust in the Green Deal in the V4 countries. For various reasons. There are, of course, differences among each country. I will definitely get to that later, because we of course can't view the whole V4 as one. They're very different in several positions. But when it comes to Green Deal, especially the Czech Republic and Poland have been one of the most vocal opponents of the suggested plan, especially now when we look at the discussion around the Fit for 55 package, which is supposed to deliver the Green Deal and deliver the reduction of emissions by 2030. There has been a lot of criticism to that coming from the Czech Republic and Poland, especially because right now with the energy price hikes, it is a very convenient scapegoat to just blame the Green Deal on this development. Of course, that's untrue and that's very oversimplified, but that is something that that lots of the politicians in Czech Republic and Poland have been doing, blaming this price hike on the EU's green policies, which some of them have not even kicked in yet. Some of them have, of course, but that's another question. So when we look at the recent European Councils, for example, and the crisis meetings about the energy crisis, there has been suggestions on behalf of Poland and Czech Republic to either scrap the ETS system altogether or to reform it so that the price doesn't rise as much as it has, even though according to some surveys and studies, of course, as you might know, the ETS price is only responsible for about 10% of the current price. Sorry about my cat, she always makes an appearance on my Zoom calls.
As a participant.
Sorry. So when, yeah, I mean, it's a bit unfortunate, and of course we have to take into account that countries in the V4 group are also in a long term have always been the more Eurosceptic ones, especially when now we look at the turns towards like illiberalism in Poland and Hungary, Poland having disputes with the European courts, etc. This also adds to this general perception that that if something comes from the EU, from Brussels, it will have negative effects on our countries. And as it was mentioned, no country wants to give up their sovereignty. And right now, the Green Deal is really being used as a sort of token of something that the EU is doing to take away our sovereignty, that it's going to cost the middle class and the poor people a lot of money, and it won't have as many desired results as it should. So it's a big struggle to actually set the discussion straight, to have it based on facts and not just feelings. But of course, feelings are what gets people motivated, for example, to go to vote, etc. So that's the state of the discussion there today. It will be definitely interesting to follow the negotiations over the Fit for 55 package. The Czech Republic will have the EU Council presidency in the second half of next year, which might actually be quite good because they will have to assume the position of an honest broker and they won't be able to push so much of their own agenda there. On the other hand, we've already seen some moves of the Czech Republic together with France and other countries calling for the nuclear and gas to be included as sustainable sources in the EU green taxonomy. So this is also one direction that is very clear that some of the countries in the V4 group are going to take, that is to replace coal eventually with gas and nuclear, sort of shying away from the more optimal renewable energy sources such as wind or solar, which there is still a lot of unused potential in these countries. So that's on the general perception of the V4 countries. And now perhaps the second part of the question was to look at like the divisions among the V4 as a group. And I have to say that there has been tensions. There's been tensions rising, both because of the illiberal turn in Hungary and Poland, and these two countries are now very often seen as countries you don't want to partner with openly on the EU level. So perhaps on the very top level of prime ministers and presidents, there is still a lot of friendliness among the V4 countries, but on the bit more operational level, permanent representations, MPs, MEPs, etc., there is a growing distance between Czech Republic and Slovakia and Hungary and Poland. There is also the case of the Turów coal mine, which has sort of overshadowed lots of the discussions between Czech Republic and Poland, especially on the Polish side. It's seen as a very important and symbolic case, again, of asserting national sovereignty. So this also doesn't help the relations. On the other hand, there is, I think, with the upcoming new Czech government, that they might try and reach some sort of agreement. So this could be put behind us, but it's definitely going to put a strain on the Czech-Polish relations going forward. Czech-Slovak relations are doing pretty well at the moment. So we maybe see a diversion of like V2 plus 2, so Hungary and Poland plus Czech Republic and Slovakia. I would definitely like to see more cooperation with Austria, because we're all part of the same geographical region, and I think also in energy questions that would make a lot of sense. But of course, the question of nuclear energy is hanging over at least the Czech-Austrian cooperation. So that might be tough, but I think going forward, it would definitely be good to increase the cooperation in our region.
Thank you very much, Katarzyna. Maybe in this point, I directly ask, yes, just we will make an open round afterwards, and you can also prepare questions if you have some. I would like to quickly go further to Mr. GAMPERL and ask in how far you perceive the potential of cooperation with the V4 countries, maybe as a whole region or as individual or bilateral. Is there potential? Is this playing much role? Because you mentioned now Romania, you mentioned other regions outside the Danube region, but what about our neighbor countries in the V4?
Honestly speaking, right now there is not too much cooperation. It's especially APG, which is in very close cooperations on the transmission level. But when you talk about cooperations on projects, on the project level, there's not so much compared to Western and Southern Europe. This has different reasons. We want to improve that, we want to enlarge that, but it's difficult. And as my colleague just said, there is some tensions between Austrian and Czech administration because of the nuclear question. This is really something that will be discussed very intensively within the next few years, because you also have it on the European level, taxonomy as an example, and there is France and other countries, and probably Czech Republic, who want to promote nuclear power as a CO2-free source of generation. This is completely in the opposite to for example, to Austria, and nowadays also to Germany. Yeah, there's also a public discussion in Germany whether this was the right decision from Mrs. Merkel, which is a physicist, yeah, to shut down the nuclear fleet. But it has been decided, yes, So the next step is to go out of coal and of lignite. But these kind of tensions make it that we don't have too much of cooperation with those countries. And I'm very grateful that we have conferences like this in order to build up a certain level of trust and confidence and to promote more of those international projects. IPSA, as I said before, could be a vehicle. And we have to confess there is huge money, funding money coming from the Commission, and this money has to be collected. You have to define certain projects, and the more countries and states are within one project, the higher the probability is that you get money out of those funds. And I want to tackle also one thing. It's when we talk about financing, there is also a certain shift in the financing industry. What you can see is, and this is promoting the ideas and also promoting the ideas of international corporations. Most of you know the ESG goals, the sustainability goals. And if you look into the sustainability reports or the strategic reports of the banks and the big financing institutions, you see that there's more shift into ESG goals. This means it will become more difficult to fund and to finance, for example, coal power plants. Lignite power plants, they are more or less out of the market already, which is essential. I just give you one figure. The biggest lignite power plant in Poland produces half of the CO2 emissions of whole Austria. Half of the CO2 emissions of Austria is the big lignite power plant in Poland. I do not want to blame Poland for this because this is a national resource, and we said we have to be pragmatic, and Poland has a real huge goal in order to fulfill the transition goals, because they are to 90% dependent on coal and lignite. So I'm coming back to the banks and the financing institutions. As we see the shift, this means if the framework of the legislations of the states, as I said before, goes into a certain direction, the direction of transition, then the money is prepared, the money is available, and the sustainability reports, the ESG reports of the banks, they are more and more going into the new directions. And who is behind those financing institutions? It's the big money from the Wall Street, for example. And Larry Fink, who is the CEO of BlackRock with $6,000 billion under management. Once a year, he's writing his famous letter to the CEOs where he's invested in, and he's invested more or less in 50% of the big corporates in this world. And you see a shift in his letters and in his policy that he sees that if we go more and more into CO2-free investments, it makes sense money-wise, because what he really doesn't want is stranded investments. And if you go into coal power plants, new coal power plants, it could be a stranded investment. So this is a promotion. So this was more a big umbrella to your question, but nevertheless, this thing, I think this helps that in order that we can push international cooperations, whether this is with our border, with our neighbor countries, or on a trans-European level.
Thank you very much. At this point, I would like to open for questions from the audience or from our viewers in the live stream. We have one question from Magister Graubenberg, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, I have a question on storage power plants because the production wind, solar energy is volatile, and we also have the problem of weather conditions for cold periods. Now, storage power plants would be the thing actually to secure the supply of electricity. Especially for peak currents as well. So how about the image of storage power plants? I think we have to raise awareness in our countries that this is a necessity and it must not take for years, certainly not 20 years, to erect a storage power plant. So what is your opinion, Mr. GAMPERL? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. Before you answer, I would like to collect another question, maybe. Dr. BUSEK?
Maybe the two ideas or proposals I'm doing is a little bit shocking for you because it's against my own history. In those cases, I was fighting against, but I'm now considering if we have to change the approach to get better solutions to reach the problems concerning climate change and so on and so on. First proposal is concerning power plants along the river Danube. It's totally right. Until now, I think that the possibilities are exhausted, either because we did it in a very good way, or there are a lot of political ideas or motions and moves against this. So I may say I was fighting the Hamburg Dam from the beginning. I may confess I'm moving in the direction to be 60% in favor of the Hamburg Dam because I'm following the situation along the river Danube. The Danube is drying out. And these areas which we want to protect before Hamburg and so on, there's not enough water anymore. And by drying out and losing all this variety of nature which is existing, it's not anymore reached. So far, I think it would be better if we have a dam and the water is standing there and we can have this situation of nature for sure. The same is true concerning Nagymaros. I think here we have to have discussions with our Hungarian friends. I think the problem in Hungary is more complicated because it's more irrational. I think you have to consider that here the discussion about Nagymaros is connected in reality with Visegrad. This is a castle on this side. It's connected with the history of King Hunyadi. The other name is Matthias Corvinus. And so far, I think it's an offense to the Hungarian history. But that does not really help. Why? Because we have not enough water level at the river Danube, starting from Austria on. For shipping, it's not really possible. It's even for the fish and so on existing. We have no discussion about. I think that has to be started. I think it will not have a result in my lifetime, I'm quite sure. But I think we have to start this. How can we preserve the river Danube and the whole situation around here? Just to make a drop in this direction. Second shocking statement is concerning the atomic waste. I understand my Czech friends and also the fact that from clean energy and so on, atomic energy might be a possibility. For me, being against atomic energy, plants and so on, was always a reason that we have no solution for the atomic waste. So far, we have to do research. How can we solve this problem? I think forget all these holes in salt mines and so on. But I think we are now conquering the airspace. We are sending now in the airspace tourists. Mr. Bezos is doing this as a job. I think maybe we can send, without any dangers, atomic waste in the airspace. There should be done some research in this direction, if it might be a possibility. And I think that might change also the situation, because all the other solutions which are around to close all the power plants by coal and so on is not really working. I think it's a problem for these countries. We Austrians can be happy because thanks to the Hermann-Göring-Werke we have enough energy by the Danube plants. You are not allowed to mention this because it would get a wrong impression concerning the Nazis and so on and so on. But I think here we need another discussion how we can solve the problems, and that might be also one solution which we are doing, because we are lying. We are using atomic energy also in Austria. We are getting from France, we are getting from Czech Republic, and so on and so on. But I think I was listening to all the governors, to Landeshauptleute. No electricity out of atomic energy. It's a real lie, because we are getting it from there. And I think we shall be more serious what is existing here, then we are getting also more serious solutions.
Indeed, a shocking statement.
If you may please turn off the microphone. So Dr. BUSEK came up with a lot of inconvenient truths and provocative statements. I'm not sure if we can cover all of them, but thank you for this input. I will get further to Mr. GAMPERL on the awareness raising of storage power plants.
Yeah, as I know Mr. BUSEK since decades. We were fighting against Hamburg, next to each other when I was head of the Young Conservatives and you were head of the Volkspartei in Vienna, and also not more Skapčikovo, because it's a triangle project. It was very highly and emotionally discussed. I'm taking here a bet. We will not realize Hamburg, even in my lifetime, in my lifespan, and we will not realize Skapčikovo and Močmaroš in my lifetime, because the discussions are too emotional from my point of view. Yeah, so we have to look for other sources of energy, of green energy, because these projects, I would say, they are spoiled. Yeah. Coming to your second point, why not send atomic waste into the universe as by rockets? I already asked this question to a physicist and to an astronomer, and the answer is there's really a chance or a possibility that you have an explosion when this rocket tries to go into the universe. And if you have an explosion, then you have atomic rain all over the globe. So no one would dare to send it up, because nobody can 100% sure that it will technically work. So that's why if we have to find solution, it will be underneath in the salt mines or wheresoever. Yeah. So this is my frank answer to that. Mr. Kauffenberg said, why not propose and promote hydropower plants and pump storage plants? It's also the discussions are very emotional. If you think about Austria, you have those nice pictures from Kaprun. Yeah. It has been erected in 1947. Yeah. Nowadays, it would be impossible to erect new hydro pump storages like this. What we are doing now is we make a third line between the upper basin and the lower basin, where we send the water in circles, and we do it also underneath. It's in the rockets. You cannot see. Yep. You better don't see where the electricity comes from than the people are quiet. Yeah. So it costs us hundreds of millions, but we do it in the rocket. But it helps in order to increase the efficiency of this hydropower pump storage plant. So what could be the solutions? As also said in my first statement, next to coal, next to gas, which are going to be for decades still our energy sources, because you can store it very easily. It's here, yeah. It'll be hydrogen. It must be green hydrogen, yeah. And it's a lot of innovation to be done, a lot of cost decreases to be done, a lot of money funding in order to create an international and global green hydrogen industry. Because if you transform electricity into hydrogen, it can be stored, it can be transported. So this can be a new source of storage. And if you look into the intermediacy from summer times, winter times, or whatsoever, we need a new source for storage. And this could be, as I said before, green hydrogen. Unfortunately, it will not be the pump storage plants because there's the limitations in the public discussion.
Thank you very much. So a lot of inconvenient truths today to face for us, but it's very, very inspiring or insightful. Sebastian, you wanted to add something shortly?
Exactly. Thank you. Just very briefly, I love you for your shocking statements because it drives us forward and brings new points into the discussion. I would rather so I agree in the point we should invest much more into research what is possible. But I do remember, I want to bring a personal story as well. When I was in elementary school, they took I went to school in Munich. They took me to a hydrogen power plant that which was run by BMW, where they would tell me that the hydrogen car is inevitable and will come and it will be used. Now, as you probably can see, my elementary school days are long behind me. And the only thing that came out of this is, I don't know, a couple of buses at the airport in Munich, in the Erdinger Moos, where they drive around with these buses. So there is a lot of research there's a lot of possibilities there, but then something else seems to be missing. And there hasn't been this disruptive point, apparently, because floodings, fires, etc., the world heating up seems not to be this trigger for whatever reason. So I would rather say, why do we always have to wait until something like this pandemic happens, where we suddenly realize, okay, it is possible to work virtually, it is possible to find other modes of communication, working together, etc. Why does there need to be this big catastrophe? And that doesn't necessarily have to be a rocket ship that explodes with nuclear waste, because if you continue like this, it's inevitably coming.
Okay, Sebastian, would someone like to respond to this right now? Otherwise, I will also add a question from the chat. Daniel Martinek asks about the tickets, the climate tickets that Austria introduced recently, and he is asking Katarzyna Davidova if she's aware if there is any discussion in the Visegrad countries about introducing such a climate ticket. Do you know anything like this? And are these countries far away from implementing such a step, or can we see any progress in this direction? Daniel asks.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, it made quite a big news in the Czech Republic, at least when Austria introduced this this ticket, which is basically valid for all forms of transport in Austria, as far as I understand it. And of course, then it's much easier for people to choose the less polluting way of transportation than individual car. And if we look at the V4 countries, I'm not really aware of any such an initiative being implemented here right now. Of course, there is discussions, especially on the city levels. So like cities, the capital cities, especially such as Prague, Budapest, Warsaw, they have, or at least until recently, they've had like more progressive governance than the national governments, at least in terms of climate. So, for example, Prague has its own decarbonization strategy now, which is a bit more ambitious than the Czech Republic's strategy. And with that also comes the issue of tackling transport emissions, which have been rising steadily since like the 1990s. So it is definitely a big problem, but it's also a very polarizing topic in the public debate. So when you, for example, mention that there should be, I don't know, more taxes on diesel cars, diesel-free zones in the cities, there should be more higher costs of parking in the cities, etc. All the policies that are quite common in the western parts of Europe. These topics raise quite a lot of public backlash in our region, at least until now. So I think it's a very slow process, and unfortunately, we haven't had any really brave political figures that would just say, this is the way forward, we're going to do it, it works in other countries, and it's going to work here as well. We just need time to get adjusted to it. So I think in terms of transportation and promoting the less polluting ways of transport, such as public transport and cycling, we are still lagging behind, for example, Austria. But I think it's definitely a good example that we could follow, and that in a couple of years it could be implemented here as well. Like the V4 countries don't have such bad public transport systems. Actually, they're quite good. They're of course not available everywhere, but the connectedness is actually pretty good. So it just needs to align its policy with the infrastructure it already has available, and it is really the policy that needs to lead the way, as I mentioned, for example, by adjusting the taxes or making the less polluting ways of transport more affordable for the public to choose, and then the public will choose it, I believe.
Thank you, Katarzyna and Daniel, for this question. I think the question of sustainable transport in the region and connectivity will be a topic for another panel discussion that we should soon also organize, maybe. We have a question from Krieger-Meyer, please.
Yes, I would like to direct my question to Mr. GAMPERL as expert for electricity. A big issue in Southern Balkan countries is the erection of so-called mini hydro plants. And that means small hydro plants on small rivers. And it energized a lot of population in these countries to protest against this. My question is, how rational is it or efficient are these plans? Because the picture in the countries is that often these projects are promoted by wealthy or oligarchs which are connected with the politics, and it's absolutely not transparent. What are the costs? What are the benefits? Because they claim the money from the state for that, and so these projects are highly unpopular because of the mistrust of a population against their political leaders there, which is a general problem as we see also with the corona epidemic. So my question is how efficient this is, and just to update the information, one part of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, basically the Bosniak-Croatian part, has already banned under this public pressure the erection of mini hydro plants, and Montenegro, which had a government change a good year before with a new government, which is very not very homogeneous, but they also pledged to stop the building of this kind of power plants.
Honestly speaking, my remark would be, then all those countries need a plan B. If the public discussions is against the erection of those mini hydros or hydro stations, then no one would invest too much money in the long duration of environmental or assessment or whatsoever processes. So this means that the money does not go into the realization of those projects. A second answer is maybe there's going to be a shift if the energy prices are going to increase. Now we have the energy crisis because of certain reasons that you heard today. From originally, the intention was that the energy prices go up by CO2 regimes. Now we have this double effect. You have the price crisis, as we learned in the morning, and we also have the CO2 prices, where the prices are going up now. And I think one of the outcomes of COP26, and I'm not so negative about the outcomes, although Greta Thunberg said it's a blah, blah, blah conference. I think there is positive signals, there's positive initiatives that I personally wouldn't have thought that might happen. The one is there's a methane initiative, because every expert tells you that methane is 28 times more dangerous to the temperature increase in our atmosphere versus CO2. So it's the first time that we have a methane initiative, and we know where does methane come from. It comes from the agriculture, it comes from the cows. So if there's a transparency, the more meat you eat, the more milk you drink, the more yogurt you eat, the more cows, the more cattle are in the agricultural sector. Then it's the rice plantages, they're also a big source for methane. Then it's the oil and gas industry, and we look into Russia. It's one of the big methane emitters, but it's the first time that you have transparency, that you have a public discussion on that. I bring this as an example, or the deforestation initiative. And even Bolsonaro made his signature, and everybody's looking at Bolsonaro. Can we trust him that he stops the deforestation of the Amazon forest? But it is an initiative, and it brings public discussion globally to us. And this is a longer answer from my side. Is I think that there is going to be implemented international CO2 regimes. It will not necessarily be the very complicated European ETS system, I think. It is very complex, and it fits for the European community. Boom. There will be other CO2 regimes, and if CO2 becomes a price tag, then the pullover from Bangladesh or from Vietnam costing only 10 euros, not internalizing the external effects, the CO2 for the transport and whatsoever, and the coal power plants in Bangladesh or whatsoever. Unless we do not have this internalization, the things will not change. If we have the internalization, and on the mid-range, I'm positive that CO2 becomes a price, methane becomes a price, then there will be a shift in the public discussion, and maybe then some mini hydro plants in Bosnia-Herzegovina, or a big pump storage on the Bavarian-Austrian border, where we also have 20 years of preparation already. Maybe they can realize, because the electricity, costs of electricity of hydro will be then much lower than compared to all those sources that have CO2 in their price tag.
Thank you, Mr. GAMPERL. So it's a long road to go. We have another comment from Dr. BUSEK.
Thank you very much for this sentence. A long road to go. I think we have no long road to go. We have to change the approach quickly. I'm extremely thankful to Mr. GAMPERL concerning his comments, because I think what we are really missing, and this is a request to the scientific landscape in all the countries where science and research is really existing, to put the things together. I think we are separately looking only in one direction or in the other direction, are shocked, it's a big crisis, and so on and so on. I fully share your impression. I think I know a lot of projects in the Balkans, but a lot of NGOs, not from the countries themselves, but also from outside, are working here to hinder these projects. Okay, there might be some justification and so on, but there is no devotion to solutions. I think we have to look for solutions. And so far, I think we have to put the things together. And if you allow me, Daniela, I think to make an input in your direction, if you consider to continue these discussions, I think we have to look to the scientific landscape, to the scientific institutions, to the universities, and so on, how we are getting more rationality into discussion. I think there is a lot of emotionality. I think that's even shocking. Everything is breaking down. I think if I'm listening every day to the news, I think I'm fully employed to break down every day. I think here we need another way to deal with the things and to look at this. It's an education question, may I say, and question of presentation. It's also a media problem, and I think we have to look for it, because I think only to live with the expectation that the world will end in the next days, it's a nonsense. I may predict for the next days you can't avoid that the world is ending.
Thank you, Dr. BUSEK. I would like to open once more if there are any further questions or remarks. Yes, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chiara Maria Murgia, and I'm a trainee at the IDM. So GAMPERL was mentioning Greta Thunberg, and I don't know, when it comes to the participation of young people and their role in raising awareness on the climate crisis. I am, being a young citizen, a young woman, I'm personally touched. So it seems that from your discussion, an essential factor which can perhaps help enhance cooperation, it can be to rely on a shared consent and support from the civil society, from the citizens. Mr. GAMPERL was mentioning the importance and the essential role played by information in fostering cooperation among states. And Katerzyna Davidova was making reference to the lack of trust in Czechia when it comes to the Green Deal, which is often linked to Euroscepticism. So my question to GAMPERL is, how do you think can you include and involve young people in a more practical way when it comes to deal with the green transition and to tackle the climate crisis in a way that doesn't necessarily result into a lot of, I don't know, being loud or blah, blah, blah. Let's just recall you, but in a more practical way. And to Katerzyna Davidova, I was about to ask, I would like to ask, what do you think is the role of youth in Czechia in rebuild the trust and in fighting the skepticism towards the Green Deal and the green transition? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chiara. Mr. GAMPERL, would you like to respond right now?
Yes,
Thank you very much for your question. I think the young people or the concerned people have a very, very important role. And if I'm citing Greta Thunberg with blah, 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 the thing is, everybody in this globe knows Greta Thunberg, and and everybody knows what she's standing for. She's part of the transition. She's part of the discussion that is now taking place. So all the young people are invited to go into initiatives or to go for a very dedicated education. And as we learned, innovation and research is very important. Go into those initiatives, research initiatives, go into the corporates and try to change things. Yeah, we are lacking young people with MINT studies or whatsoever. Yeah, that help us to promote the transition, because we need the young people highly educated with their heart in the right place, yeah, in order to make this transition. This transition can be also done in the corporations. So go into the corporations, go into the institutions. You can do some impact there, yeah. And the second thing in the public discussion, we call it nudging. We see it now in the public discussion about the vaccinations. There's still some people who say, I don't want to have my COVID vaccination. Yeah. But there is some certain, what should I say? It's a lot of information. Nudging means helping people to change their mind, and especially if they say they can only go to a restaurant if they are two cheap people. This is nudging. Yeah. What I want to say is, it's also the public societies, it's the politics to transform the frameworks, to transform the level also of information that things can change. So in the end, yeah, I'm quite optimistic that we will be successful in the transition. I'm pessimistic when I think about the duration. It will take long. We make our research regarding e-mobility. Still in 2050, you are going to have some 10 or 50% of combustion cars. You will have maybe in Uzbekistan or in wheresoever, in further countries where they cannot afford electric vehicles. It takes long time, it takes decades, but as we have strong impulses now in the public and the political discussion, I'm optimistic that we make the changes in the directions, yeah. And you, the young people, you should do everything in order to foster this promotion and this new direction. So it's up to you to make the changes faster.
Allow me one sentence. My invitation to Greta Thunberg and all the others being so clever what we shall do, we shall go to politics and for the change of things. That's really interesting. It's easy to go to the media, blah, 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 blah. What is it? The decision making. They have to go to the decision making.
Thank you. As we are really coming to an end, and we have to be pretty punctual on the finishing this panel, I would like to thank Carola for this question. Apparently, everybody who is listening now or later, young people who are studying MINT can send their applications to Verbund. They are very open to get new young people engaged. That's at least what I heard from the statement. There was another question for Katarzyna Dawidova, and I would like to also ask you, Katarzyna, to maybe combine it with the final statement. My question would be I would like to ask you to sum up or give one example and one concrete step that has to be done to enhance regional cooperation in the energy sector. Thank you. Katarzyna, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. So regarding the first question and the role of young people in the Czech Republic, when we look at data, like how active are Czech young people compared to, for example, German young people, we see quite a big divide. When we look at the map, for example, of the Fridays for Future protests, there is still a clear East-West divide in the EU in terms of the numbers and the frequency of these protests. It's in part because there isn't yet such an established tradition of like civil society being active and openly challenging the government in the post-communist countries. So it's harder here to get people to go into streets and to protest against the inaction of the government than it is, for example, in Germany. But it is also because there is a lot of collusion, let's say, between politicians and the fossil fuel companies here, which is maybe stronger here than in the Western countries. At least from my experience, it is often very hard to be challenging the power here in the Czech Republic or other V4 countries, just because the systems of the power are so strongly established for many years. And if you go into streets and if you would like to become a Greta Thunberg in the Czech Republic, you would get so much hatred from lots of the media, which are also sort of having ties to some of the Czech oligarchs and so on. So that might be discouraging to many young people. On the other hand, I see a big hope in the Czech younger generation. Just the fact that they're being active and they're trying to organize, it's definitely positive. I think they will continue to do so, but I believe that without a change at the political level, it's going to be very hard to make the Czech Republic more open towards the green transformation, and not just be the laggard that it has been so far, but also to try and be the leader. And there is lots of benefits to be gained in like modernizing the economy, etc., becoming a hub for green technologies and so on. That I believe that without like the political will at the highest level, we won't really move forward as much and as fast as we should. And in terms of the final statement, I mean, it is very hard to pick just one area of cooperation. I think that like the increased interconnectedness of electrical grids will be definitely really crucial for the future, when there is a higher share of renewables in the electricity mix, and therefore there will be a need for more flexible transition. So I think that maybe is the topic number one in our region where we could increase the cooperation. And I just wanted to say, after reflecting on the panel today, that I really do believe that Austria could be a good role model for some of the V4 countries, at least perhaps better than Germany, because lots of our countries have quite conflicting history and relations with Germany. Sometimes Germany is seen as too hypocritical, going for green transformation, but as it was mentioned, like switching off nuclear and then having to replace it with coal before they're ready to actually replace it with renewables and so on. So yeah, I do hope that there will be more best practices sharing, for example, between Austria and the V4 countries. I think that would be great.
Thank you very much, Katarzyna, for this statement. Sebastian, would you like to go on with your one measure or area of cooperation?
I know that we have to leave very quickly, so I'm going to be super brief. To what has been said before, going into the institutions and trying to change something there, absolutely agree. But we also have to provide the opportunity that the people can actually go there. Because if someone knocks on your door tomorrow and says like, hi, I'm Greta Thunberg, I'm going to change something, I'm not sure if they will let you in. Second point, the necessity of nudging and bringing people to change something, also agree, and I also see that the Schnitzel vaccination campaign nudges a little bit, but there would be a lot of nudging over the next couple of months if we have this additional number, which was 10,000, which is nothing at the current situation, what we need. We had 10,000 new vaccinations through that nudging, the same amount as if we have new cases of COVID every day. And the last point, what do we need? what I always say in all of our contexts, we need more European governance. We need to reform the European institutional decision-making, less member states, more competences on a European level, shared responsibility, shared possibility, and then hopefully these things will work better.
Thank you, Sebastian. Mr. GAMPERL, your very brief statement, please.
Yeah, my brief statement is the money is available to invest into the transition. Whether this is the 750 billion recovery fund from Europe, or is it the private sector? There's really huge and massive euros and dollars available. We need the predictability from the governments. We need it from Brussels. We need it in the country states. If we have predictability, then investors will invest into the transition. So my answer is, if you have the predictability, go and create projects like IPSE, as I said before, and you can invest into those projects, and it will help to foster the transition. And my second statement is we heard lots about the smart wife of Mr. BUSEK, I also know her, and she said, why should I be ashamed because of the oil heating? She will then change if heating with oil would cost double versus a electric heating or a biofuel heating or whatsoever. So nudging is helpful, not in massive steps. What really helps is if you look into your wallet and say, how does it cost? Yeah, and if we introduce those CO2 regimes, everybody will change. Mrs. BUSEK will change. We all will change, and everybody can make his positive steps. And if he's aware, if he is eating an avocado from Colombia, or to make holidays in Maldives every 2 years or whatsoever, it's decision of each and every person, and each and every person can make a relevant move. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a good statement. In the end, I will avoid making any summary because we are really out of time, unfortunately. At this point of the discussion, thank you very much, all panelists, for this inspiring, emotional debate, actually, even if we try to stay rational, but I think there is no energy discussion without discussion on democracy, on values, on principles, and identity, especially national identity. So far from that. Many thanks to our cooperation partner, particularly to Dr. Michael FAZEKAS from SECI for hosting us today. If you're not following our activities of the IDM, please visit our website, www.idm.at. We have a lot of exciting events going on in the next days. I kind of lost track of how many events we have. Please visit our website, social media channels. You will also find the live stream of today on demand on our YouTube channel, so you can share it in your network. In the name of the organizers, so thank you very much for your participation and contribution. Let's be actors of change. Thank you very much. Stay curious and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.